Habib, seeing your last name, I must ask, did you make ice cream as a young man?
I did.
I thought so.
Yes. You've been around LA for a while?
And I enjoyed a Christmas season up around Altadena one year and was amazed at the generous display.
Yes.
Very fun.
That was a tradition they had for over 60 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you from LA originally?
No, family goes back a long ways here in Glendora. I grew up out in the Inland Empire area.
Okay. Did you eat Bailey and ice cream as a child?
No, I
Okay.
learned about it. I learned about it during that trip to the Christmas show, and I said,
Okay.
well, "How does this happen?" And so I got to go find that. So absolutely.
Well, Mendel, ask
Yes.
and you shall receive. Lisa joined our Zoom meeting.
Hey, there you go.
Perfect.
Lisa, welcome.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Why aren't you at the other meeting?
Kathleen, are you about ready? Kathleen, you ready?
Ready when you are.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome and Happy New Year to our regular City Council meeting, January 12th, 2021, our first council meeting of 2021. I'll now call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. For the audience tonight, I'm the mayor and serve as presiding officer for tonight's meeting. Tonight's public meeting will be conducted utilizing Zoom video communications. This allows the city to conduct essential business and comply with public health administrative recommendations to protect the public and city employees to practice social distancing and limit exposure by not allowing in-person public meetings. To ensure that the public will be able to participate in our meeting, public comments can be submitted as live comments during Zoom meetings and via email at publiccomments@cityofglendora.org. A brief lineup tonight, we have one special item, COVID-19 reopening the economy, 3 consent items, 2 unfinished items, and 2 new business items. And a little statement from me as 2020 has been a challenging year with new crises or challenges popping up at any given moment. This last week in the world of politics, unrest, and competing news and or misleading news stories, not exactly knowing what is true and what is not, what is and not seeming to be true to the extent of the status quo, I would urge everyone with their varying opinions to educate yourself and stay informed. Madam City Clerk, can you please do the roll call?
Thank you, Mayor Alouis. At this time, I will conduct an oral roll call of the City Council. When I call your name, I ask each council member to say present. Councilmember Thompson,
Present.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Present.
Councilmember Boyer,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Present.
and Mayor Alouis.
Present.
All council members are present.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'd like to have now the invocation by Mr. Chris Lewis of Foothill Christian Church.
Thank you. Let's pray together. Father, we come to you in Jesus' name and ask for your mercy and grace in our time of need. Lord, few of us ever thought we would see the events that unfolded in our nation's capital last week. Our country is divided. Partisan politics seem to be the rule of the day. We become suspicious of each other. Friendships have been frayed. Alliances have been broken. Anger is the emotion of the day. And like Paul, we're acting in hateful ways and hating one another. And all of this during a worldwide pandemic, a surge in Los Angeles County like we've never seen before, hospitals all overrun with the sick and dying. Death has come closer to many of us these last few weeks. Father, we're tired. We're tired of being locked indoors. We're tired of seeing people leave. We're tired of seeing businesses fail and doors locked. We're tired of seeing daily case numbers and death tolls. We're tired of the political rancor and increasing entrenchment. And so, Father, we come to you as our only hope. We ask that you would arrest COVID-19. We pray as you commanded for our city. We pray for continued peace. And Father, we thank you that for the most part, we in the city of Glendora have been spared from the violence. We pray for the welfare and prosperity of our citizens. We pray for business owners and ask you to sustain them. We pray for those grieving and ask you for comfort. We pray also for those in authority. We pray for our police officers and all those in law enforcement. Father, we thank you for the service they render to our city and ask that you would protect them from any harm, either from those who would desire to do them evil or even the risks they take every day in the midst of a pandemic. We pray for our medical professionals. Give them great wisdom, Lord. Help them as they maintain an exhausting schedule and help them to safely battle this epidemic on the front lines. We pray for our schools, the administrators, superintendents, teachers, students. We know it's been exceptionally hard for them as they tried to educate children under very stressful and sometimes unworkable conditions. Father, help them. And finally, Father, we pray for each member of this council and the city staff as they seek to care for and make decisions that will affect each of us. You said if anyone lacks wisdom, he should ask of God, and you would give it generously and without reproach. Father, these leaders have never faced a moment like this before, and so on their behalf, I pray that you would grant them great wisdom, even this evening as they deliberate and discuss each item on the agenda. If they ever needed wisdom, Lord, it's now, and may they look to you and may you grant it, Lord. I pray for unity in their ranks. I pray against those things that would unnecessarily divide them. Lord, thank you for robust debate and dialogue, but I pray that in the end, that debate would not divide. It would not fester and build walls between the citizenry and its leaders, or even between these leaders themselves. Bless them, Father, and may they sense your help even tonight as they do the good, godly work of making decisions that contribute to human flourishing in our blessed city. We love you and thank you, and we ask all this through your Son and by your Spirit, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. That was beautiful. Councilman Friedendahl, can you lead us into the pledge, please?
Yes, please. Please stand as you may. Join with me as I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the United States of
of
America
America
and to the
and the
republic
republic
for which
for which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Thank you, David. With that, will bring us to our first special item. I'd like to invite City Manager, Mr. Adam Raymond, to give the update for the reopening of the economy.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as we've been before you 13 previous times, this marks the 14th update on COVID and the economic reopenings. This presentation is a pickup from the last one. And due to a lot of the confusion of multiple health orders, we will cover some of the information again, just to make sure everyone is on the same page as much as possible. Next slide, please. From a state level, in August, late August of 2020, the state rolled out a county by county reopening process by which counties moved from color to color, allowing more economic activity as they met certain thresholds, largely tied to new infections per 100,000 residents. At one time, the earliest the city of Glendora could hit the yellow stage or the least restrictive stage was early 2021. That date is now undetermined. On November 16th of 2020, the state pulled what it called the emergency brake a little farther. It was a limited stay-at-home order. It put 94% of the state back in the most restrictive purple tier and had some hour restrictions on non-essential business. Next slide, please. Where we're at currently is the state pulled the emergency brake a little harder at the start of December and rolled out a plan which put everyone into regions. The Southern California region is where Los Angeles County is. Every region then was treated largely on ICU capacity and then infections per 100,000 residents as well. As you've seen in the news, a lot of our hospitals are under pretty significant pressure, especially in the ICU capacity. And if ICU capacity fell under 15%, these restrictions will be put in place in a 24-hour period. For Los Angeles County, that became effective the 5th of December, and the county moved to mirror those on December 6th. We'll talk a little bit about that moving forward. Next slide, please. As I just mentioned previously, we're in a regional approach. The Southern California region is comprised of Imperial, Inyo, Los Angeles, Mono, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Next slide, please. The ICU capacity as of 12 p.m. this afternoon, the only region not in a very strict stay-at-home order is the Northern California region. The Bay Area, Sacramento County have both fallen since our last update into the threshold of a modified stay-at-home order. San Joaquin Valley and Southern California continue to be at a 0% ICU capacity rate. Next slide, please. So hospitals measure their ICU capacity twice a day, and the state updates their metrics twice a day. These numbers are not inclusive of NICU and PICU data, which remain their own. These are we only talk about these metrics for adult ICU capacity. Next slide, please. From a county perspective, if we looked at the county reopening protocols, this would be the state of reopening. Almost every county in the state of California, with the exception of 4, would be in the purple tier. Only 1 county would be in the moderate reopening stages. Again, this is less than 1% of the state's population wouldn't be in the most restrictive tier. Next slide, please. When we look at how everything's currently arranged in a regional category, 98% of the state's population is in the most restrictive tier. You can move in the region that you're in. You can move for non-essential travel, hotels, motels within that region. And Southern California region is quite large. To move through regions, across regions, requires essential business. If you do move, then it requires quarantining, and a little more on that later from the County of Los Angeles. Next slide, please. Just a quick overview of the restrictions that are currently in place. We've talked about this list before. We'll talk about updates to this list at the end, but just briefly, the elimination of all gatherings outside of the household are prohibited. Face masks and physical distancing outside the home are required. And again, all individuals living within the regions shall stay within their regions when those areas dip below 50% ICU capacity. Next slide, please. Worship and political expression are permitted outdoors. Since that time, indoor worship has been allowed as long as infection protocols are in place, as have outdoor playgrounds, which are also on the original list of exclusions. Currently, there's no changes in schools. However, Newsom has provided up to $2 billion for reopening of schools, and that's when infection rates hit 28 per 100,000. Currently, the numbers in LA County and the Southern California region are well over 100 new infections per 100,000 residents. All retailers are allowed to be open at a 20% capacity, and all on-premise food, beverage, and alcohol and in-store is prohibited, but you can pick up and carry out, but you cannot consume any food or alcohol indoors. Next slide, please. Again, restaurants are available for takeout, pickup, and delivery. Entertainment, professional sports were allowed to continue without audiences. Offices, remote working is highly encouraged, especially in essential sectors as well. Outdoor recreation facilities remain open, are allowed to continue to operate outdoors, and outdoor facilities, however, may not sell food or drink for on-site consumption outdoors. Next slide, please. Overnight stays at campgrounds are not permitted. No hotel lodging shall accept and honor out-of-state reservations unless it's essential travel. Again, you may travel within the region pursuant to the state and county rules. Indoors and outdoor playgrounds must close. However, the outdoor playgrounds are now allowed. Our outdoor playgrounds of the city are open, but all indoor recreation facilities, hair salons, barbershops, and personal care facilities are closed for indoor usage, as are all indoor the museums, zoos, and aquariums. Next slide, please. Movie theaters must remain closed. Those haven't been open in Los Angeles County. And again, bars, any live audience sports and amusement parks, all are also closed as well. Next slide, please. In the County of Los Angeles, they've had a number of new health orders. We'll hit the high notes. In May of 2020, as we came out of the very first sort of peak in the COVID cases, the county moved from a stay-at-home order to a safer at work in the community order. That was modified on November 18th when a temporary safer at home order was issued. That order was added further restrictions on December 6th of 2020 to match the state's provision. The most recent health order we have in Los Angeles County was issued on December 30th, and that provided additional clarification for indoor church services, outdoor playground use. It clarifies non-essential out-of-region travel. It clarifies mandatory quarantining and self-isolation protocols, and clarifies essential business infection protocols, ensuring that there are now capacities on break rooms and capacities in other areas for essential businesses, which didn't have to post that information before. Next slide, please. So we get a lot of questions and still do. How come the city isn't doing something different? And that's because the city must follow the County of Los Angeles orders. We cannot make anything that is less restrictive. So if the state sets the ceiling on allowances, the county may set the floor. The city may set a basement. And to date, the city has not set any additional restrictions. In fact, the city council on several occasions has authorized staff to advocate for a safe reopening to ensure that all businesses, both small and large, are considered within the reopening protocols. Next slide, please. So enforcement of the county and state health orders, as has been the case in our community, the county has visited us, inspected businesses for compliance with the health order. The city has taken a non-punitive educational approach as it relates to the county's health order. Our goal is to seek to educate and not be punitive. However, the city's non-enforcement of any health order provision and from an educational standpoint may still be enforced by the County of Los Angeles Environmental Health, which may send correction notices, administrative citations. They can suspend or revoke various licenses and take other legal actions as well. Next slide, please. City facilities, we made the decision with the increase in cases as well as activities of the city to close our facilities to the public. However, staff are still available via appointment, phone call, video conference, email, Monday through Friday. We continue to have a lot of our services. The most frequent use is paying your water bill or other utility bills, and that is still allowable either through our website, on our virtual city hall, and also through the Dropbox at city locations. Next slide, please. Vaccinations are becoming more and more of a key topic. What we've done here is included the applicable websites at the state and county. The CDC at a federal level sets the prioritization phases. You hear a lot of terms like tiers 1, 1A, 1B, 1C, and then within the phases or tiers, there's additional steps and nuances and list of names, and they change frequently. The best course of action for information on vaccines, both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, is to visit the websites here, which provided updated details, sometimes which update daily, to who is eligible, the information and documentation you needed, and where you can find the vaccinations. As you all may be aware, the feds today announced that individuals 65 and over would move to the front of the line as well and be eligible. There's been reports on surplus vaccines in various areas. The state of California has also urged for a more robust rollout. One of the things we have seen, LA County will announce 5 super sites that they are going to be looking for vaccines, many of which are testing sites now. We do know the city of Los Angeles, where the largest testing site in Dodger Stadium is, will now be a vaccination site. In Los Angeles County, they hope to administer up to 500,000 vaccines by the end of January, and statewide that number is 1 million. So from a federal perspective, as the rules change, both the state and county update their rules as well. If you have any questions, please visit the city's website and or visit these locations here. This is where the most up-to-date information is. Next slide, please. As always, we encourage you to visit the city's website, the county, the CDC, and the state of California for information as well. With that, Mayor, we'll turn it back over for you. If the city council has any questions, be happy to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam. Does anyone on council have any questions of Adam?
No,
No? Great, thank you. This now bring us to the public comment period. I will now open up the public comment period and invite members of the public to address the city council. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on both on and off agenda items. Without objection, I will be opening up a separate public comment period for item number 7 when we discuss the goal line. So please save your goal line questions for that public comment period. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Please address your comments to me, the presiding officer. Public comment is limited to 30 minutes. If you'd like to request to speak, select the raised hand icon in Zoom before the close of the public comment period. You will then be called on when it's your turn to speak. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments, either written or otherwise?
Mayor, we did receive 2 correspondence prior to the posting of the agenda, and those communications have been incorporated within the council's agenda packet and made available to the public. In addition to that, 3 new requests have been received via the public comment email that I will read into the record following the completion of the Zoom participants providing their public comment. At this time, I would like to call Josina. I am sending you a request to unmute. You
Okay,
have 3 minutes.
thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Alowis, City Council, city staff for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Joe Cena, President and CEO of the Glendora Chamber of Commerce. Since you last met, the Glendora Chamber continues to help our business community deal with and decipher the ever-changing mandates that Mr. Raymond mentioned a short time ago. We've also continued to help educate the general public on how they could help our business community by shopping Glendora and slowing the spread. Because it's up to us to do this, to slow the spread so we can get back open, get our businesses back open, our schools back open, before additional, businesses suffer additional closures and financial worries. Also, with the last stimulus package passed by the federal government, round 2 of the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, is now underway, where businesses can get an additional infusion of cash to pay necessary expenses, including a kind of a bonus for restaurants. Also, with round 1's deadline tomorrow at 11:59 p.m., the state of California, through the Office of Small Business Advocate and the governor's office, offering grants in the amount of $5,000, $15,000, and $25,000, depending on the business's gross profits. These grants are not first come, first served. And for businesses that aren't chosen in round 1, they do not have to reapply for future rounds if the funds are available. So businesses can visit careliefgrant.com to apply. In closing, I don't have to tell you how bad it is out there with our businesses. Small, especially micro businesses like we have in Glendora, suffering tremendously. Well, we watch the news and the big businesses are having record profits, stock splits, and more. With the outside dining closed, it didn't just affect restaurants. I would say it equally affected, and sometimes more, are the retail is around it. And then the personal services that are also closed. So I just remind people to continue to shop local, shop Glendora, and do what we can so we can get things back open. Finally, I would just like to end my time remembering the 2 Capitol police officers that passed away this past week. One during the Capitol insurrection, or whatever you want to call it, which shouldn't have happened. Didn't have to happen. And then short days after, another took his own life. So I just want to end my talk and remember them for their service to this country and to our nation's capital. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Kathleen, we have a Mr. Milgan that does not have the raise hand feature that would like to speak.
Okay, Mr. Milligan, I'm sending you a request to unmute.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Great. My name is Mike Milligan. I'm a San Dimas resident, a former Glendora resident, and I've been in the San Gabriel Valley for my entire life. I'm currently the Scoutmaster for Troop 489, which meets in Glendora and consists of boys both in Glendora, San Dimas, and the surrounding area. And I'd like to make a comment today in support of the proposed Medal of Merit. Such a recognition by the city that our troop resides in would be a great kudos to hardworking scouts, among other people, that this Medal of Merit would be proposed for. And I could tell you, seeing boys get recognized and the reactions on their face, especially in this very difficult time that we've been going through, being nearly entirely online since March, any bit of recognition to help these youth and see that what they're doing is making a difference is well recommended, and I can't put more support behind it. That's all the comment that I have, and I appreciate the time with you.
Thank you, Mr. Milligan.
Mayor, we have one more request from Joe Heidelmeyer.
Heidelmeyer.
Heidelmeyer. And I'm sending you a request to unmute.
Hey, I don't know if you can see me.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. I can't. I don't know if you can see me or not.
No.
No.
But go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. For some of you, I've been quite a pain in the butt for several months, but I have just a couple of minutes to ask for a favor. I would like you to address the short-term rental issues in Glendora. Specifically, the home that is adjacent to mine is 1236 Sierra Madre. It's a 4,000 square foot house listed on Airbnb, sleeping 16 people. It's a 3,900 square foot house with a swimming pool on an acre of ground. It every weekend is a housing rental for anywhere between 20 and 30 people, anywhere between 9 and 12 cars. Over Christmas, there were 11 cars and 22 people there. Long story short, what I need is your help. In August, you realized that we had a very serious situation with the party house on Sierra Madre. We had the same situation with this house across from mine after you passed the ordinance in August of 2020. In October of 2020, I sent an email to the mayor outlining how the city of Los Angeles and LA County outlined their restrictions. And my concern is that we've allowed, by leaving out quite a few items in the October 2020 ordinance that allow this to happen. Okay, and my second concern is that Airbnb is considered a short-term rental, which by Glendora code is considered to be a hotel. Okay, and under the zoning laws, it's a single family home. So I called Joseph today, and 1236 Sierra Madre is zoned as a single family home, yet it's running as a hotel, as an Airbnb. So I'm asking you to please, for the good of the city, please, until this is quieted down and the pandemic is done, please don't allow these short-term rentals to continue. Please, I know you're trying your best to help the people that have small homes and are renting homes, but the single family houses are a really serious issue. We're just asking for nothing but trouble, and I can tell you because I live right across the street from it every single weekend. And I sent you guys an email. I hope you've had a chance to read it. I'm sorry for being a pest, but guys, I live across the street from it. You know, I've asked Mendel 3 times to call me so I could talk to him about this in person. I've gotten one email back from the mayor, and I've gotten an email back from Adam. I've gotten a lot of cooperation from Chief Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Heidelmeyer. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we have any others that wish to speak before you read the correspondence?
No, no other requests to speak have been received. So the first request I've received was from Danielle Thompson Benschop. Good afternoon. I was told that I could email you with the hopes of getting a comment made at tonight's city council meeting. I would like to discuss the feasibility of putting a stop sign on Pepper as it enters the 700 block of East Walnut. This is our street and there have been several close calls. With Glenwood closing, there is concern that people that are unfamiliar with the streets trying to maneuver the closure and the likelihood of an accident occurring there. Thank you, Danielle, 556 East Walnut. And then our next public comment was received from Dave Landers. Mr. Mayor and council members, I would like to add my support for the proposal of a Medal of Merit and proclamation to be presented to citizens who have demonstrated outstanding achievement and/or contributions to the community through service or character that models citizenship in our city. As a schoolmaster of Troop 483 here in Glendora, I feel that this recognition would support and encourage what the Girl Scout Gold Award and the Boy Scout Eagle Rank recipients demonstrate in terms of character, citizenship, and hard work through the service projects required for each rank. The personal achievement and contributions to Glendora made by these young women and men through their individual projects demonstrate what citizenship in the community is all about and serve as a model for all youth in Glendora. This recognition for the Eagle Scout Rank and Gold Award would also show these individual scouts that the contributions of service they made through their projects affect more than just one small group, but benefit the entire city. They can indeed make a difference in their city and community. Thank you for your time. David Landers, Scout Troop 483. And then the last comment I have received was from Linda Herman. And my name is Linda Herman. I'm writing you regarding the proposed Medal of Merit program. We live in uncertain times. This can affect many people in different ways. Isolation and feeling like you cannot make a difference is an easy trap to fall into. I cannot think of a better way to bring light into somebody's life and the city as a whole than a program like this. It can be as simple as someone who takes in his elderly neighbor's trash, perhaps someone who without being directed cleans up a park or trail, a neighbor who makes cookies for the families on her small street. All small deeds as these done to make someone feel a little bit better or better about the city. I am sure things such as these and many more everyday good deeds from Glendora make Glendora a better place to live, work, and play. To those of you who would question or doubt the merits of this program, approve this worthy program and bring a little light and hope into lives of unsung heroes of Glendora. Mayor, that is it.
Thank you, Kathleen. We have no other folks that want to speak?
No other raised hands.
Okay, at this point, I will close the public comment period, and I'd like to get a couple of answers from staff. Adam, do you want to take this one for Joe Heidelman about the short-term rentals? Heidelmeyer?
Sure. We've received many emails from Joe over the period of time. His emails to Airbnb and other areas expressing his concern for a party house. And just for a reminder for everyone, as we've moved through the pandemic, there are really two requests that Joe mentioned. The first one is adherence to the various county and state provisions, which through the city's municipal code are a requirement of Airbnb or any other short-term rental. Movement within the Southern California region is still allowed according to the state and county. The secondary one is the issuance of or the existence of short-term rentals. So when the council had an emergency ordinance in response to what we referred to the party house on Sierra Madre, the city was inundated with phone calls on that property and another property located in the city that were used as party homes. The incident that created, honestly, national attention showed up in many areas where hundreds of people for a party that had to be broken up and were cited for numerous noise gathering infractions and violation of the county health order. The city does allow short-term rentals in single-family resident areas. That was what we heard tonight was zoning is not correct. I know Bill's on the call and can provide clarification on any of the zoning requirements. And Chief Egan's on the call as well to address any of the calls for service. And so anytime we received a call for service about noise complaints related to a single family residence, we've come. Chief, do you mind just giving a brief overview of calls for service and what we do for noise complaints? And then we can talk a little bit about compliance with the county health order.
Of course. So for standard calls for service, any house, this house, your neighbor's house, anywhere in the city, there's no timeline that is required for a disturbance or a disorderly gathering. If there's a thrashing party, a bumping stereo, you name it, kind of party next door to you, which is disturbing your peace, and you phone the police, will respond. There's a mechanism in place under the municipal code for us to administratively cite the homeowner for loud and disorderly gatherings. We've used that tactic on locations throughout the city of Glendora with amazing results. If you recall, I was before council a few months back presenting a higher structure to that tiered violation system, making it a little less expensive in the front end, but a lot more robust on the back end for violations of cases like that. In this particular scenario, when we would get a call for service, say it is at 11:30 p.m., we would respond. If we heard no noise and we heard no party, and we stood outside for 5, maybe 7 minutes, walked around the property on the outside, remembering that this is a private property, that the people inside there have Fourth Amendment rights set forth in the Constitution, which trump anybody else's wants or desires. If we hear nothing, then we don't have a violation. There's no reason to pound on the door. There's no reason to make any contact with anyone at that home. And if the violation is just solely based on that the home has 6 cars in the driveway or on the street, and that they're in violation of the short-term rental policy, that isn't true. This house was provided a permit on November 12th to operate as a short-term rental. And so anytime after that, they're in compliance. Now, should this home have a party, which could happen, right? People can call, they can report that loud or disorderly gathering, and we can go enforce that municipal code. We can also employ the tactic that was built into the short-term rental policy called the Good Neighbor Policy, which puts the onus and a little bit of care and consideration on the actual physical owners of the property to help abate it themselves. We did that for 2 reasons. One is to get them involved, make sure that they're good caretakers of the property, good caretakers of the community, showing that they're invested in it. And 2, to offset some of our time and effort and expense being drawn out to the house. We have yet to find a violation of the Good Neighbor Policy for this particular location. We have on other short-term rentals cited the owners, cited the actual physical property owners and the guests at those short-term rentals for violations of our loud or disorderly gathering section. And if in the event in the future there is a violation that's substantiated, which violates our good neighbor policy or the short-term ordinance policy with the city, we can provide administrative fines and levy fines against them and make some corrective actions to address the property. Related specifically to the health department order, just as Mr. Raymond stated, we are our enforcement tactic has not changed since the beginning of this pandemic. It is enforcement through education. We try to educate people everywhere we go. If we get a call for service where we do encounter something which is obviously outside the health department violations, once we address what we're there for originally, we do take the opportunity to educate those people, hand out, make sure that they are aware of the current health department order, ensure compliance. But we're not the experts when it comes to citing, people for those violations. That is the health department. They're the ones that determine, close proximity and how long they've been there. And like I said before, the Fourth Amendment provides certain protections for people in private homes, and that is a private home. Even though it's being used in a commercial property setting, they are the occupiers, the tenants of that. Mr. Widener's on the call too. He could probably speak a little bit about that if needed, but it provides them protection from unreasonable search and seizure, and us pounding on the door and asking everybody to exit the home and detain them and identify them to determine if they're immediate family members or not. Remember that the health department order does provide for immediate family members to stay together in a home. And so it's a fine line, but I would stand on the side of the Constitution at this point and provide an education point of view and try to make the best of it as we can, enforcing what we can in each case.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Adam.
Mayor, if I just may add, Mr. Heidemeyer, if you're listening, you've sent us 5 emails since you spoke, and I can assure you we're not blowing you off. We've attempted to answer every one of your questions. I know this is a difficult situation for you, and we understand sort of as it relates to your view of the situation. The single family rental program and licenses are in place to ensure compliance. We simply have not received any other calls from the community reporting this home or any others around it. So we appreciate your insistence on the rules to change. We understand your frustration. Please know that we've done our best to answer all of your questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Adam. And Adam, you might want to take this one as well from Ms. Daniel Thompson about stop sign or signal at 700 block East Walnut.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw Allison on the call writing down the intersection. So we will definitely do our best to take a look at that. And we do have safety review committees where we review stop signs and other potentially dangerous areas, and would be happy to make contact if she's still on the call, if she wouldn't mind sending us in a message her contact information to myself or to Allison Sweet, who's on the call. We'd be happy to make contact. Oh, did the mayor freeze? $2021's a lot like 2020, apparently. All right. We want to wait 30 seconds, or Mayor Pro Tem, would you mind taking us through?
Sure. Did we lose him there altogether?
It does appear we have lost the mayor briefly.
Okay, well, with no other public comment, then we can move forward in the agenda to the reports and statements. So with that in mind, Mr. Thompson, you want to lead us off?
Sure, be happy to do that. 3 quick things. I'm very pleased that the Goal Line team is on the call and will be updating us. I want to express my thanks for the hard work that they're doing. The transparency that we deal with them in, and the adjustments that are being made along the way. And I am thankful, as I said, that they're on the call tonight to give us an update, and appreciate the patience that everybody gives as all of this work is being done. Secondly, I want to support what the chamber said and Joe said. Joe and Michelle are doing outstanding work, just tremendous work in terms of responding to the needs of merchants in town. And I can't thank them, I just want to say thank you to them again. But I want to lend my encouragement for us to eat here, shop here, support the merchants all throughout the 20 square miles, and keep them afloat, and render the monies that we can give them in terms of the services, the products which they have. Lastly, I just was very touched by Pastor Lewis's prayer, and he is absolutely right. We are all weary and tired of 20, from an economic standpoint, a political standpoint, a relational standpoint, schools, relationships, friends, people that have died, people who are sick. And yet I just hope that leadership within our city and our neighborhoods, community, can show a sense of grace and mercy, patience and tolerance. That does not mean that we can't talk about things and debate things, but I hope that this year will be framed by a real sense of understanding, supporting the good of each other. Look for ways to have fun. Look for ways to laugh. Look for ways to be kind. And I hope that as we do that, and as our neighborhoods do that, and our schools do that, and our churches do that, and our civic groups do that, our service clubs do that, that it will be catching within each other. And this year will be an excellent year where tolerance and being kind to each other will be the paramount thing for this entire year. So blessings, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mr.
Mandel.
Thompson.
Sorry for the inconvenience, but somehow I froze and I got kicked out. Maybe I wasn't doing a good job, who knows? But anyway, with that, David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo many of Mendel's thoughts, and I too look forward to the day when driving around our town and walking around our town, I see the town that I grew to love, because seeing things closed up and not being able to operate and serve as they want to do is just discouraging. But we need to stay positive, and we need to keep that effort to find good things to do, and keep supporting each other. So with that, let's take the new year and stay as positive as we can and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Gary?
First, I just want to ditto what everybody has said. But before I get there, Adam and Allison, real quickly, Pepper and Walnut, I'm very familiar with that intersection. I got on Google Maps real quick, and I can't believe we don't have a stop sign there. So I think when we take a look at that, something probably happened, but that does need to be a priority. But when we look at some of the things that are happening today, we just got through the Christmas and New Year season, and we saw so much joy in the holiday. We saw people getting out, interacting. We saw a lot of volunteerism and a lot of charitable work, people reaching out and taking care of each other. And that's what we need to all be about. And that's what Glendora is about. And we need to continue that. And I'm so proud of the way that our community and our neighbors interact with each other. You just got to remind everybody that, there are people that we all know that voted for Joe Biden And there are people that we know that voted for Donald Trump, and they're all good people. They are the people that, you know, they're on your kids' little league teams. They go to church with us. They just have differences of opinion. And we need to remember that we can control the way we act here in the city of Glendora and the way we treat our neighbors and our friends. We have business people that are struggling right now. We have people that are scared from the pandemic. We have people that are worried about their freedoms. So we all are dealing with different issues in our own personal way. And it's just important that we continue here in this community, in our neighborhoods, to make sure that we understand and treat each other with respect and kindness, and know that we are going to move forward having differences, but we're going to move forward together. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Gary. Karen?
Thank you. Along those lines, on January 25th, APU is hosting a civic engagement workshop and panel discussion. And so if you go to the APU website, you can find the information to click on that link and join that discussion. You know, unfortunately, we've seen examples of how not to have civic engagement and people making dangerous and terrible decisions in their behavior and expressing their opinion. So I would encourage us to come together and find out constructive and positive ways to have civic engagement. And I think that workshop that APU is offering is a good opportunity for people to come together and have conversations. And also the way that we can all be good citizens is doing many of the things that have been mentioned already, but also just doing those 3 simple little things that we can all do to be a great neighbor, a great citizen, that we can be a hero. Wear your mask, stay 6 feet away, and wash your hands. And that will keep us healthy and move us forward and reopening our economy. And looking forward to the fabulous Gold Line coming through our community. So yay, rah. Progress is moving forward just like the train, and looking forward to all of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen, for the great lead in to the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast, February 24th. So we can all get together with all the nice words that we said to pray together, and for all the good of not only Glendora, but all of humanity. Again, on 24th, this is going to be a virtual Mayor's Prayer Breakfast, first of its kind. Karen's been doing a great job in leading the group in trying to develop this moving forward. And I'm sure it'll be something you're not going to want to miss, because it's going to be quite unique. Tonight we'll close in the memory of Mr. Paul Hatch, that passed away on Christmas Day. And Mr. Hatch, he's been a close personal friend of mine for many years. Besides owning and managing real estate here in Glendora and around the country, Paul's been a very active member in the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. He served as a bishop in Southgate, Arcadia, and stake president in Glendora. He served with his wife, Dorothy, as a mission president in Des Moines, Iowa. Mission from 1978 to 1981. He and Dorothy also served together in Spain, Las Palmas mission, living primarily in the Canary Islands. Their service continued as regional representatives for the church in Spain, as president of the Los Angeles Temple from 2001, 2004. Then later in life, he learned Spanish, and in Salt Lake Mission. And he's also served when he was in his 80s. He served in a mission, which is almost unheard of. He and Dorothy served their final mission in Guatemala, and again, learned to speak fluent Spanish. There were times when I'd be out sitting in Paul's office, and he would hand somebody in his office some cash to run outside and give a family or an individual who he thought was in need of support, either a family or an individual in town. And he just gave freely without even knowing people. And it was just an incredible man. Paul leaves behind a wife, Dorothy, 7 children, 40 grandchildren, and 76 great-grandchildren. Mendel beat that one.
I will not be able to do that. That's remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So with that, we will go on to reordering the agenda. Does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda tonight?
No.
No, hearing none. We have no public hearing tonight. So this brings us to consent items, items 3 through 5. Items on consent calendar will be enacted with one motion without individual discussion unless a council member has requested to be removed for a separate discussion. Does anyone wish to poll or comment on anything this evening?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, can you take a roll call vote, please?
Sure, Mayor Alouis. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Davis, a second by Councilmember Thompson. And now we'll conduct the roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alouis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Kathleen. This brings us to unfinished business, item number 6, possible establishment of a Medal of Merit program established by myself and Councilmember Friedendahl from the strategic planning meeting on the 30th of, I believe, July of this last year. So per the actions of November 10th meeting, we extended it to this meeting. So I'd like to see if invite the city manager to report.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I will make my comments brief. Speaking with you and Councilmember Friedendahl, we decided not to do a PowerPoint presentation, but to give a brief update and turn it over to both of you for conversation. There appears, I believe, both of you will have some additional options for the council to consider. So the item before you is, as the mayor stated, is the follow-up to the initial Medal of Merit consideration. Staff went back and actually watched the item a couple times to make sure we tried to encapsulate all the city council direction, a lot of back and forth about the existing programs the city has, which is summarized in an attachment in your staff report this evening, as well as a draft mayoral recognition policy that covers both the mayoral tile and a potential Medal of Merit program. I think one of the items that we were requested was to look at the existing budget for mayoral type of programs, which we have. The available balance in the $5,000 budget is currently $507. The amount of money spent out of that account ties back to the mayor's tile. There is a summary of mayor's tile in the presentation this evening that gives both the history of the mayoral tile as well as the costs and numbers printed for the past 5 or 6 years or 7 years, excuse me. One of the things that was interesting to note as staff did additional research was that the tile was originally developed as a thank you to special citizens and or groups in the city for their incredible service. The initial mayoral program was established in 1982 and has continued to current. Of course, without any written rules, the program takes over a life of its own through all those cultural norms that we have here in Glendora. So with that, Mayor, we'll turn it over to you. It sounds like you and Councilmember Friedendahl have some additional considerations for the city council this evening, and staff will do our best to listen as diligently as we can and take direction for action. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam, for that. I'm going to let David start us off, and then I'll go, and then I'll let the rest of the council chime in. David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Adam, for that report. I want to kind of represent this as an opportunity from our November meeting. During the November meeting, I believe that the original intent of this kind of got switched into tying to another program, and I'm not sure that's where it needs to be. So I'd like to share with this and establish the Glendora Medal of Merit as a standalone recognition, recognizing Glendora's residents for achievements, civic contributions, levels of significance that exemplify the values of character and citizenship that we all talked about in our even statements of saying, this is what we're about in Glendora. The target recipients on this are those that have made significant achievements, either through civic contribution or tireless commitment and dedication to a respective program. By reaching a milestone in their lives or having such an impact on the community, it's not always a common daily event, rather one of significance in their lifetimes or of significant notes through their work and achievement and noteworthy service. The award would recognize these residents, again, residents of Glendora, and acknowledge the result, efforts, and impact toward our community. I don't believe it should be considered to be tied to one position or entity for evaluation, but rather nominated at large with a submission to the city manager's office, and to make it reasonable and fair as we move along in the future, be vetted by the mayor and mayor pro tem for approvals and selection for the designation. I suspect that once we have a standard or a set precedent of certain eligibilities, that might become simpler. The eligibility could be youth and or adults, doesn't have to be one specifically. Would follow process as many of the other city recognitions have taken, yet not be a party to one sole member's discretion or approval for designation. It's not intended to replace an existing program or to be connected to one, and I'd like to see it as a standalone program. We in our last discussion chose to assign it some connection to the mayor's tile. I think if we do that, that would certainly discount the mayor's tile, but also discount the Medal of Merit's opportunities. And I must say, in my time in town and up until this year, I never knew the mayor's tile even existed. So while it's a valid program and it has some long tradition, I think this is something that is geared toward recognizing a different consideration. Some considerations that I suggest for this might be the high school valedictorians at our 4 high schools in town or in our town services. Boy Scout Eagle Scout recipients that we've heard about, Girl Scout Gold Awards, adult service program members that have gone up above and beyond as unsung heroes and continue to do things in the community that we just know that they're out there, but this might be a way to help us recognize those. This is something that the recipient could wear on their uniforms of their organization or the graduation frock at graduation time, the civilian wear, things that they can recognize and not everyone gets. Looking at the numbers that we've had historically, we're estimating anywhere from 10 to 30 per year, probably is a maximum number. Some years we've not seen Girl Scout Gold Awards and we've seen fewer Boy Scout Eagle Scouts. Other years, those come out to fruition and there's maybe a few more. Same with high school valedictorians. Sometimes the valedictorian may not live in Glendora or be part of that, but we may want to consider that as well. Some high school classes have more than one, so we could see some flexibility there. But I think the real importance here is the opportunity to recognize youth and adults that are contributing service, citizenship, quality membership, and not look at it as being tied to, hey, here's a trinket that we can give out with this at one person's discretion, but rather from the city for recognition as resident-wide. So hope you'll consider that and think favorably toward it. Would like to do so and make a motion when the time comes that we give it that consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, David. I found it extremely interesting to read through the staff report and read the history of how it came about back in 1982. And the presentation to an individual was for their exceptional service to the community. And I didn't know that obviously beforehand, because I really didn't know what that was about. And it's kind of ironic because the mayor at the time was Guy Williams. And before I knew this, through our mayor's prayer breakfast, I have planned on interviewing him for the mayor's prayer breakfast, and he graciously accepted. So I thought that was ironic that I had picked him, not knowing that that he was the first mayor actually to do this. I have expanded mine, and yes, I have the most out there, but I expanded the list by 26 folks, and some of my colleagues, they've bounced around with different folks they gave it to, and it's quite their ability and to do so because it's such a special tile. And you know, I gave one to a longtime business person here in town, and she actually started breaking down and crying because she's seen these things, she's heard about them, but was never presented with one. And it was just such a great honor. And it made me feel really good as well that someone who knew about it, but was always passed up and never received one. So I had actually added the chairs of our boards and commissions, our service clubs, Chamber of Commerce, school superintendents, our Citrus College representative, former mayors, our legislative representatives, which actually I've gotten some nice feedback with them. Sometimes, you know, we have some stressful relationships with some of the bills and things going forward, but it also shows that we're all human and out the hand, the olive branch, you might say, which is really, really good. Also to our battalion chief and to the mayor of Mocha, which Mendel did as well, because we had such a great visit with them when we went. It was just awesome. It was just an experience that I'm never going to forget, and neither will my wife, and I'm sure Mendel as well and his wife. So, you know, this is, and it's really, you know, when you go up, and again, what I said before, when I started this and got the idea of when I took my city pin and I pinned it on an Eagle awardee, I mean, the crowd just loved that. It was something that was very unique and very special. It's kind of hard to pin a mayor's tile on the vest of an Eagle awardee, or give it to a gold award or valedictorian. You know, they have their sashes and their ribbons that they wear. It's kind of hard to do that. It's not appropriate. But a pin like this, a medal like this, is quite appropriate, and they get to wear it in honor and show that they've done something above and beyond what is a normal call of duty, and they get to show that off for that brief amount of time, and then do with it what they may. Most of them, again, will put this probably in a shadow box or put this in a safe. A piece of paper, again, they're just get filed away. It might get framed, but more than likely get filed away. This is something very special. We have, you know, what, an $80 million budget roughly when you add all the accounts up. We're talking $500. We spend more on that when we clean up South Hills for the homeless. And what don't we want to recognize the folks that have done something spectacular or out of their way? Adam, a question for you. We talked about the mayor's budget, but our overall budget for council, what's the balance of that? My guess is probably we have most of it all left over because of COVID.
Sure. So two-part answer to the question. So as you recall, when we went through this 2-year budget, there was some concern that some council members spend more of the budget than others. So we did 2 things. One, we broke out the mayoral activities in a $5,000 account. Then we have 5 $4,000 accounts, $4,000 for each council member, which would be spent during a normal course of business, a couple legislative trips, and or a new phone, a new iPad requirement, so on and so forth. So for the $20,000 for city council, there's about $18,000 at least remaining. There's very little expenditures in that account this year, as you indicated, with COVID and everything else. There hasn't been much travel and seminars or other things that council would normally spend money on in those areas.
So this would normally get just carried over into the next 2-year budget if we didn't use it?
No. It would roll, it's that money would roll back to the fund balance in the general fund for unused expenditures. It would not be carried over unless there was a specific request from the city council to carry over that funding.
No, what I meant was that we're gonna have the same budget again in the next cycle.
Yes. Yes,
And that amount, is it per year or per 2-year cycle?
per year.
Per year. All right. So I'll bring it back to the rest of the council. I'll start with Gary. Any questions?
No real questions. And again, in hearing what David's comments, I'm the one that made the suggestion that this be considered as part of the budget for the mayor's tile. I got to be honest, at the time, I didn't realize that there was a budget in place already for, it's not just for the mayor's tile, but for the additional mayor expenses that the mayor would have over and above the other council members. So it looks like the financing is in place. My only concern with it is the cost of doing this. But I like the idea. I think it's a good idea. I was there the day that Michael pinned the pin on the Eagle Scout, and I gotta tell you, it was pretty cool. And the people there thought it was. So I think this is a good program. I just want to make sure that we're not wasting taxpayer money and not going too much over and above what we are already spending. So if we can do this within the budget, I'm very supportive of it.
Thank you, Gary. Mendel?
Thank you. I have to say that this is not a monetary thing for me, and people that know me are probably shocked right now because I'm pretty much a stickler on that. And in my report prior, I want to be a man that walks the walk and talks the talk. And so I'm trying to find a way to, support this. And the reason I say that is because we have 10 or 11 other ways that over the years we honor all kinds of folks, and I'm all for doing that. David and I brief, and for the people that don't know what that means, we brief with our leadership, every week. So Adam and David and I sit down and talk about a variety of things that are going on. And I can tell you that we're honest. And so David and I have talked a lot about this, and I do want to find a way to support this, even though I think there's multiple other ways that we already do this. I do like what David said, and to cut right to the chase, I like the fact that the process will include vetting, and that the current mayor or mayor and mayor pro tem will have the ability to vet and to approve, if I understand this right, the names that are going to be shared. I do think that there needs to be more of a system and a process, so that this is something that I think we all want it to be, and that is a very high esteemed sort of honor. So I like the fact that there's a process for two of the council to meet and vet this. Our city manager will be a part of that. So I would like the policy, the draft policy, to be more specific there in terms of that. As David knows, I do support the things that he has talked about in terms of Eagle Scout, the Girl Scout Gold Award, all of these things. I certainly support that. The other thing that I would like to see us do is have a panel that is outside of the five of us create this award in terms of the artwork and all of that kind of thing. I think that's a healthy separation from all of us, so it does not become any of us but it's reflective of the spirit and what our city is. And if we could do some of those things, then I would certainly want to support this. But I do like what David said, and the elements of what he spoke about. He and I have talked about this several times, and I do want to try to find a way to support this and mesh it in with everything else that we have. So that's it.
Thank you, Mendel. Adam, you did have a suggestion for another group to help design this?
I did not.
I thought we talked about community service.
I believe that was a conversation. That doesn't come from staff. Request. I know from a staff perspective, we had the draft policy in there. We considered the 2 council members involved in this item were assisting staff with the design. I believe that came from council for the request to look for someone else to design it from the outside to get additional buy-in from the community.
Okay. Karen?
Yes, thank you. I've had concerns about this from the start, and I continue to do so. I appreciate the comments that have been shared, but each of those recognitions that were described are ones in which they are an award in and of themselves. So for us to add on top of that, I don't see as necessary. I have a difficult time with giving people more stuff that doesn't have a practical value. We give out many things as it is. And if someone was pleased with receiving a city pen, then to me, that in and of itself is sufficient. To add something else when so many other organizations are already honoring those people. You know, for instance, recently, Mr. Boyer nominated one of his neighbors who does great things in the neighborhood. For his neighbor to receive recognition, to receive a thank you, I think was above and beyond anything that people that do good deeds want to get. So to get more stuff, I think oftentimes becomes more about the people or the person giving the stuff than it is about the people receiving it. And so anytime I struggle with giving people more stuff, just for the sake of us giving them stuff, but especially in the midst of a pandemic, to be concerned about giving people more stuff. If we are to give citizens anything right now, I would want to give them a food card to the family that needs help buying food because they lost their job. So I have a difficult time when there's so many organizations and all of those, you know, many of those examples are an award in and of itself. So I don't think we need to add another layer of our own on top of that. When the pandemic is over and we go back to the quarterly recognition, I think that when we recognize people there, that means the world to them. And I think as a city that that's more than sufficient rather than having some other thing to give out to folks. So that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Karen. So I'm going to take privilege since David and I had started this, and usually the mayor doesn't do this, but I'm going to make a motion to create the Medal of Merit Award with the coordination of 2 council members and the city with a city committee and must stay within the council budget.
I'll second that.
One point of clarification, Mayor, just for the motion. Does the motion include the establishment of an administrative policy?
Yes. That's what I thought I was doing with the a committee, city committee.
I believe the reference to the committee was only for the design, not the actual rules, but I'll look with Councilmember Thompson if that's the case.
You can add that if that's okay.
Yes, I would support a city group to do both as per what the mayor said. I have read the draft, and for the most part, as David knows and as Adam knows, I like what is in the draft. I think it's a good start. There's a sentence or two that are in there that I don't like, but David has corrected, or at least, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in your statement, earlier, you have minimized what my angst was. So I would certainly support what the mayor just said in terms of, an outside group drafting a policy with city help, of course, and creating the actual metal and the artwork and the ribbon and all of that fancy stuff.
What's the cost for designing that and the initial setup of that, let alone the production?
I would have to defer to Adam on that.
In the staff report in November, we considered about $200 in startup costs, and then depending on the quality of the metal, anywhere between $5 and $11 a metal. And that then would be dependent on if there's a shadow box issued with the metal and what have you. Mayor, if I can get one piece of clarification, is it for it to stay within the mayoral budget itself, or is it the entirety of the city council budget, including all 5 members of the council?
I would think the entirety of the city council, because each council member could make their own request for this, as opposed to come out of one budget.
So point of clarification for the group, the draft policy is included that, and I believe with David's amendments that it would be submitted by anyone in the public and or including council to nominate someone. That nomination then, once vetted by the city manager's office, would be subject to approval by the mayor, mayor pro tem, whoever those 2 positions would be. Or are you requesting something different?
I think that would be adequate, unless the council thinks something else.
And my second question would be, for the design of the program, if the council's okay. I know time is of the essence for a lot of you here, and I know if we establish a committee, we're going to be coming back to you in 6 months with a policy on the committee. So just want to make sure the council is in agreement with the process. And I know you guys will vote with the motion here and not trying to confuse things a little further. Just want to be really clear with the direction staff has moving forward. So.
So what actual clarification do you want as far as there's going to be an outside committee that designs this and puts the policy in place?
If there's a committee that's established, the council would have to come back and appoint a committee.
Do we want to do that, council, to add more layers of bureaucracy?
Well, I'm fine either doing that or allowing staff to create a policy and have us vote that up or down.
Well, and I think staff has plenty to do right now.
Well, I would agree, but.
How about community services? Would that be an appropriate place? Adam?
John shaking his head no.
I think any committee would definitely have some insight into, that's already an established committee. If we wanted to take a draft policy for potential review, we could send it to a couple of different committees if you wanted and get feedback, if that's the course of action. In that case, we would take the policy that's before you, remove the mayor's tile, make it metal of merit, provide some amendments that talks about the submission and how it would work. However, we come up with that draft language for the city manager's office initial review, subject to anyone's request, including the city council and mayor, subject to then meeting the requirements of the mayor, mayor pro tem, whoever that would be. We could work with the various groups on artwork. I think the intention of that area would be for additional inclusion of the community to have more buy-in, but that's the process that I can think of off the top of my head.
How How about if we do this? Mendel and David. It was originally supposed to be David and myself were going to help design this and get this project off. Mendel and David, would you like to be the two committee folks to get this project moving and going, and we'll trust your judgment?
Well, I'm not a design guy, but.
No, but for the policy,
I'll
and
work with David. Sure. I'll work with him.
otherwise this will get stuck into the myriads of bureaucracy, and
Yeah.
this is going to make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine to work with him. But I do like your idea about having John's group to do it, because that is already an established group, and they're pretty broad in terms of understanding what we want, the city wants, and everything. So.
Okay, so then we'll just amend it to have the two of you as the two city representatives and community services develop the policy and the design. You got that, Adam?
Yes. I know Kathleen is feverishly writing there to ensure that we have an entire motion. So Mayor, just to make sure, as Kathleen is writing and we're trying to confuse the issue as least as possible, we have a subcommittee of council members Thompson and Friedendahl who will finalize a draft policy for consideration by the council. We will refer the design of the Medal of Merit to the Community Services Commission. From a financial standpoint, the goal is to establish and pay for any costs out of the entirety of the city council budget, not just the mayoral budget for mayoral duties.
Correct. You did a great job. I'll so move that motion.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Do we get, extra pay for, designing this?
Look in your mailbox, Mendel.
Yeah, I know.
I have a motion by Mayor Alowis, a second by Councilmember Friedendahl, and I will conduct a roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
No.
and Mayor Alowis.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Davis voting no.
Thank you, everyone.
I will let you notify John of the extra work.
Will do. Will do. This brings us to our next item number 7, goal line. So I would like to have the goal line and the L line project update. I'd like to invite Public Works Director Allison Sweet to present the staff report.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're during the construction phase of the Gold Line extension from Glendora to Montclair. The Gold Line Authority does present regular updates to the council. So in addition to this update tonight, the builder, Kiewit Parsons, who's part of a joint, the joint venture constructing the project and designing it, is requesting a blanket approval from council to extend the construction hours from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. to 12 midnight on an ongoing basis. Currently, the extended hours are authorized as needed by city staff per the master cooperative agreement. Staff is requesting direction from council whether to allow these extended hours on an ongoing basis, which will permit a double shift for the contractor without requiring staff authorization. Currently, the city has street closures at Glendora and Barranca, and others are set for the future, and also including the permanent closure of Glenwood Avenue. And so I will now turn it over to the presenters. And we have Habib Balaniev, the Chief Executive Officer of the Foothill Gold Line Construction Authority, Chris Berner, the Chief Project Officer from Foothill Gold Line Construction Authority, and John Bly, the Project Manager from the Kiewit Parsons Venture.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for seeing us tonight, having us included in the agenda to review the progress we're making and some of the future decisions that we'll be making with the project. We have a short presentation, which I'll begin and then turn it over to Chris Berner. As Allison already mentioned, John Bly will be presenting, also representing Kiewit Parsons Joint Venture. And of course, Lisa Levy-Bush, our communications chief, is also on the line if there are any questions. So if we could go to the next slide. We'll be talking tonight about the overall project extension from Glendora to Pomona, and we'll provide that update. We'll talk about some specific project elements that are unique to the city of Glendora. As you know, a significant part of the project is in Glendora and has some unique features that we'll go over. We'll talk about our community and business outreach plan, which is integral to our success of letting the folks that are impacted by construction know about the construction and know what to expect and how best to mitigate any issues in the community. And then we'll finally talk about the supplemental environmental impact report with regard to the parking and a reduction of overall parking for the project. Next slide. Many of you know the project already. It runs through the San Gabriel Valley. It'll take us from its current terminus at Azusa and go all the way to Pomona. Ultimately, we'd like to get the project from Pomona to Montclair, should funding become available. And that is something that we will be considering over the next year. Next slide. The things that we have to focus on looking ahead is our critical path list. And if you see here on this list are those things that must be completed over the next several months to keep the project on schedule. As I mentioned, we have the parking SCIR, which will be certified or presented to the board for consideration tomorrow at our board meeting. And that's been ongoing for 6 months now. We will then start freight work, civil work, which will begin taking place this January and February. We will start bridges, the bridge structures. The first one will be the Route 66 bridge, which again will be in the January, February period of this year. We'll start the freight track construction in February, and then we'll start the freight track shift at Barranca and Lone Hill in July. This is all a significant amount of work that is required to keep the project on schedule. And simultaneous to that, we will be looking for additional funding that gets the project from Pomona to Montclair. Next slide. The baseline project is underway right now. We have begun many aspects of the project last year. We did a lot of pre-construction activities that started just about a year ago. This allowed us to get grade crossings prepared for construction, lets us deal with bridges and stations and looking ahead at all of the major construction that's going to take place. We will start more construction as days go on, but right now we are in construction basically throughout the right of way. You'll see freight track shifting, as I mentioned, in the mid part of this year, and then we'll all be working towards substantial completion and end of 24 and turn the project over for pre-revenue service to Metro in 25. Do keep in mind, should funding become available, this schedule may change and Metro will control the opening ultimately, but it would be in about 2028 if the project were continued to Montclair. Next slide. We do have several grade crossings which are underway right now. This is the most significant amount of work that's impactful to the cities. As you see here, we have several that are already started and will be working for several months. And then in the months ahead, we have several more that will be online. And Chris is going to talk about those in a moment. Next slide. And I'll turn it over to Chris now. We'll talk about the work that's progressed through 2020.
Thank you, Habib. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. We've made a lot of progress since we started this contract back in April of 2019. We completed our first grade crossing, Gladstone. It opened to the public day before Thanksgiving. So we're very happy about that. And currently we have 3 grade crossings closed, 2 within the city of Glendora, that being Barranca and Glendora Avenue. We also have Wheeler Avenue in Laverne that is closed for relocation of utilities and construction of the grade crossing. Next slide, please. We continue work all throughout the alignment now. The project's really opened up at this point in time. We have removed just about all of the old freight overhead communication line that was throughout the project. I believe in Glendora, it might be completely down. We continue to remove ground vegetation throughout the right of way. Once again, that work is largely complete, if not complete, within the city of Glendora. We're working with the California Public Utility Commission on approval of one final grade crossing that is in the, it's outside of the current, it's in the Montclair option. So it's not will not be a delay to the project. Next slide, please. We continue doing a lot of work, a lot of design work. It's a design build contract. So the contractor had to complete the final design. They've been working on that since October, making good progress. We have probably about another 6 months to complete the design, but because it is design build, we're able to complete certain elements of the design and get started on the project. So the design and the construction kind of overlap one another. So we're making really good progress on the design. We continue reviewing a lot of design submittals. There's project management submittals that we also continue to review. Next slide, please. We've been working very closely with all project stakeholders. That includes the corridor cities, Metro, SCRRA, to keep the project moving forward. It's been very challenging with COVID-19. I would have to commend all the city staffs, and certainly including Glendora. They've been absolutely great to work with. We've had very challenging times, so I think we've learned to live with COVID-19 a little bit, but you know, we greatly appreciate what they've done to help continue to review the design, continue to perform inspection, and do what needs to happen to keep the project going. We greatly appreciate that. We are completing the final supplemental environmental impact report regarding reduction in parking at the stations. And as Habib mentioned, that is being considered, that will be considered tomorrow by our board. Next slide, please. Looking ahead over the next 6 months in Glendora, the project design continues. We're making really good progress with that. We're looking to complete Barranca by the end of January. We're working on completing Glendora Avenue as soon as possible. We've been working with the contractor. Unfortunately, they discovered a communication line that had asbestos on it. That was not known by the owner of that communication line. So that unfortunately delayed us at this grade crossing, but we are working with the contractor to get it open as quickly as possible. And we think with a little bit of luck, we can get that done by the middle of February. And we are looking to begin Elwood Avenue and Vermont Avenue in February. Glenwood Avenue, we are planning to close permanently next Monday. Mid-block grading, drainage, and utility activities are going on. You'll see if you're driving out looking at the alignment, there are certain areas where there's a lot of activity going on. Third-party utility work, that's Southern California Edison Gas Company, communication utilities such as AT&T. All that work is going on, you know, throughout the alignment will continue. We have begun construction at the Glendora station. There's a pedestrian undercrossing there, and that's been excavated and it is under construction right now. We hope to begin construction of the Route 66 bridge in this month. It might slip out into February, but we are going to get started on that soon. And there's quite a few other freight bridges that will be under construction that are small bridges that go over washes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm going to discuss some elements of the project in general and then specific to the city of Glendora. All throughout the alignment, the light rail track is generally a grade. There are certain grade separations, and we'll go through those here. And it's generally within our existing owned right-of-way that we've had for several years. There will be overhead wires above the track that power the train. As I think most of you know, there is an existing freight track in our alignment. It's going to be a shared corridor, but that freight track is in the middle of the alignment. Unfortunately, we have to completely rebuild it and relocate it to make room for the light rail. And so that's sort of our first order of business, and that's underway. We're going to also include each station will have a parking facility. The number of spaces are currently in the environmental review. There are traction power substations that converts the utility power into the power for the train, and they're located about a mile apart. I believe there's 3 in the city of Glendora. There's 19 bridges on the entire project that are either new or being renovated. The 3 major ones within the city of Glendora are the Foothill and Grand, Route 66, and the Lone Hill Avenue. There are quite a few at-grade crossings on the project at street level. There's 21 in total. There's several in Glendora. Glendora makes up a large portion of the project in length. And you see all the grade crossings there, through Glendora. And there are some permanent street closures west Ada at Vermont, and Gloomwood Avenue at the railroad crossing. Next slide, please. This shows the station site plan. The station there is in an orange color that says Gold Line Station Platform. It is just to the east of Vermont and at the Vermont Ada intersection there. In the blue is the currently approved station parking location. And later on, you'll see a slide that shows our proposed modification to that location. The dashed yellow lines show all the pedestrian circulation. So you'll be able to access the station from Glendora Avenue, from Vermont Avenue, from north of the station, and from south of the station. So there's a lot of different access entry points to this station. Next slide, please. This shows a rendering. This is looking at the Ada Vermont intersection, looking sort of in a southeast viewpoint. So it's gives you a little bit of an idea of what the station will look like. Next slide, please. This is the station artist, Michael Hillman. We originally hired him to develop the concept. He is now part of the design build team working on executing his artwork, fabricating the tiles and the other elements of the artwork. Next slide, please. This shows a little bit of his concept. It's Glendora Home, a slice of sunshine. He's going to have hand-painted tiles on the canopy bases, and he's going to have these station landmarks. I believe there's 8 of them. You saw some of them on the rendering, and they're spread out throughout the station area. I think it'll be very nice addition to this station. Next slide, please. This is the Route 66 bridge. As you know, there's an existing freight bridge there that will be left in place. We are going to build a new light rail bridge that will be to the north, sort of the northeast of that existing bridge. And you can kind of see some elevations of it there on the top that show the architectural elements of the bridge. That's going to have custom barriers, going to have a custom girder, and the column will have a custom pattern on it. It'll be a completely custom, unique bridge that was gone through a very lengthy process to establish these architectural elements. Next slide, please. This is the Foothill and Grand grade crossing. The freight will remain at grade at this location. It will be reconstructed and relocated slightly, but it will be generally where it is today. We will come in and sort of do a lot of improvements at this intersection. Safety improvements. We're going to put in some additional gates and to protect pedestrians and vehicles from interaction with the freight train. The light rail will be grade separated here, and the bridge will have similar elements. You can see the elevation of the bridge there in the top of this slide. The elements are very similar to the Route 66 bridge. I mean, generally identical. There are some differences, but generally identical to that bridge. Next slide, please. This shows a model that we had built of Foothill Grand Bridge. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we can't, bring it to, your typical meetings that you've had in the past and show it off. But we built it to kind of show you the scale of the bridge. So it just kind of gives you an idea of what it will look like, in its environment. Next slide, please. This is the Lone Hill Boulevard Bridge. This is, I believe, our longest bridge on the project. And it goes through, the light rail will go over Lone Hill Boulevard. The freight will remain at grade. It will be relocated. This bridge will have the same architectural elements as the other two. We'll do some roadway modifications there as we reconstruct the freight track and put in some additional safety measures for pedestrians and vehicular traffic at that grade crossing. Next slide, please. This shows a picture, once again, of the model that we had made for this bridge. Once again, it gives you an idea of the scale of the bridge in its environment. Next slide, please. Next slide. I'm going to talk about our community and business outreach. That's very important to us. We know that our project coming into your community can cause some impacts during construction, and we want to do everything we can to minimize that as much as possible. So each major impact areas, such as street closures and bridge construction, will have its own outreach plan developed by our team and approved by city staff. The plan identifies those groups that are most impacted by the activities, and we refer to them as VIPs. These VIPs include direct neighbors, first responders, waste management, bus service providers, those types of things. Those whose daily life or businesses will be directly impacted by whatever construction activity that we are doing. These VIPs will get one-on-one outreach from the team, such as hand delivery or emailed construction notices. The plan also identifies the broader area of impact, typically related to the detour route for general outreach and signage. The team then develops construction notices for the city approval. And then we distribute those directly to the VIPs about 2 weeks ahead of the impactful work. Longer for bus service providers and first responders that need to make alternative plans. And signage is also posted at the time for the broader community. Next slide, please. Our contractor, KPJV, and the Construction Authority work together with the city to broadly outreach using a variety of tools. In addition to construction notices, we utilize our interactive construction map, which lists all ongoing construction activities and is linked to the city website. We also send out the notices using traditional and social media. Signage is used to support businesses and warn of activity for the broader community. The next slide, please. When businesses are impacted by a long-term closure, there is business open during construction signage. If you've been out to the Gladstone area, you've seen a lot of that. Construction Authority also has started sponsoring advertising for businesses in quarterly coupon magazines. We're doing everything we can to help support these businesses. Lisa Levy-Bush oversees this program for us. If you have any feedback or improvements you would like her to integrate into the program, please let her know. I would say that she runs a top-notch program. I've worked on several other projects, and she does an absolutely great job of minimizing the impact as much as possible. Next slide, please. The supplemental environmental impact report that we have going on, next slide, please, basically looks at and has studied the reduction of parking at 5 of the stations on the project within the county of LA, from Glendora to Claremont. And these modifications have been studied have come up and have been studied as a result of Metro board directed policy changes. In 2019, Metro implemented their supportive transit parking program for their current and future projects. They have developed a parking program and a policy that wasn't in existence when we began planning this project. As a result of this new program and policy that they've created, Metro has requested that the Construction Authority modify the planned parking at the Glendora, San Dimas, Laverne, Pomona, and Claremont stations to be in conformance with this new policy and program and their forecasted parking demand. And so that's why we're studying it. These modifications have been evaluated as part of the supplemental environmental impact report. We are looking to certify that tomorrow, present it to their board to consider that. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the parking space changes at each of the stations. And it shows a total there at Glendora. We had 2 options that we environmentally cleared. One had 400 spaces, one had 420 spaces. We could have done either option, but Metro is recommending a total of 302 spaces. So that's a reduction, a fairly modest reduction of 118 spaces. Next slide, please. This shows the potential project modification in Glendora. Once again, the station is there in orange. It's near the Ada Vermont intersection. The dashed yellow lines to show the pedestrian access. It's a little hard to see here, but the current environmentally cleared parking site is outlined by a blue dashed line. It's kind of white and grayish there, and sort of the peach color that is the additional property that we are looking to acquire, and the site would be a surface parking lot that's outlined in the green dashed line. Next slide. The next slide will show it a little zoomed in a little more. You can see it a little bit better, where once again that I'll call it peach color. I'm not exactly sure what color it is, but that's the additional property that we're looking to acquire to turn this into a surface parking lot. Next slide, please. We've been working on this, as Habib said, for about 6 months or so. Back in June 2nd, we released the notice of preparation. We had a scoping period from June 2nd to July 8th. We had a virtual public scoping meeting on June 24th. We prepared a draft environmental impact report, and we released that September 25th. That was out to public review for a 45-day period. Comments were received on or before November 9th of 2020, which included comments from the city of Glendora. We have, addressed each of those, prepared a response for each of those comments, and we've prepared a final supplemental environmental impact report that can be found on our website and will be considered by our board to certify it tomorrow. Next slide, please. So that's all I have on my portion. I will be handing it off to John Bly of our contractor to discuss a request for extended work hours. I would like to clarify that the extended work hours are for the grade crossing work only. It's not throughout the entire alignment. I'll leave it up to you, Mayor, if you want to have questions of the construction authority now, and then have Keywood Parsons present, or have them present and just have questions.
Let's go ahead and have John present, and then I'm going to open up public comment. We'll bring it back to council, and then we can have a bunch of questions and answers.
Okay, great. Okay, John, I'll introduce John Bly. He is the project manager for our joint venture, Keywood Parsons. They're the same firm that built the previous phase 2A of the project, and they actually are two of the primary companies that built phase 1 of the project. So they know the goal line very well. And so I will turn it over to John to begin his presentation. We will have to move forward a couple slides here to get to his presentation.
All right, Mayor, council members, and city staff, thanks for your time tonight. As Chris mentioned, hopefully be able to convince you that it makes sense for the project and for the city to allow us to work a few extra hours every night to expedite getting these grade crossings done. Next slide, please. I'm going to cover the current situation. Chris has hit a lot of that already, so I'll go through that fairly quickly. Talk about what we're proposing and changing the hours. What I think the benefits will be to the city and to the project. Some standard mitigations we follow that limit our noise at night. And I don't think it made the final PDF, but I'll give a quick overview of the schedule comparison of allowing us to double shift versus us staying at single shift. Next slide, please. Chris went through much of this already as far as the status of the grade crossings in Glendora. Talked about we're headed to getting Barranca done by the 25th of January. We had issues at Glendora Avenue dealing with some unforeseen asbestos conduct that held up work for 5 weeks there. One thing you didn't mention is, and maybe some of you know, Pabst bought the Miller Brewery, and there was a train every day going through Glendora to the brewery and back. With Pabst taking over, they haven't been brewing any beer here for a while, so we were able to shut down that train starting back in the 1st of November. The authority stepped up, and there was one remaining customer on that line west of Glendora, that's QB Foods. But with the authority support on kicking in some money, we were able to work with QB Foods to get them to truck their soybean oil around. So as long as Pabst isn't running a train, we have this agreement in place with QB Foods, which keeps us from having to run any trains. QB Foods is only running 1 to 2 trains a week. And so this has allowed us basically to shut down the freight rail west of Wheeler in Laverne all the way through Glendora. And this is a big advantage of the job. And this is something that adds benefit to us being able to double shift. I'll get into that a little bit later. We mentioned the Glendora conduct. And then one thing I'd like to point out is, as Chris mentioned, we did finish Gladstone the day before Thanksgiving. We got it open. There's a punch list we still need to get through. And we were able to, in San Dimas did allow us to use multiple shifts, not full double shifts, but we were able to use multiple shifts there. And during that time, we're not aware of any noise complaints that were received. There were some complaints about how long it took. It took 4 months, but it would have taken longer if we were required to stick to single shifts. And we could have gotten done a little quicker, we think, if we were allowed to do full double shifts. We weren't quite able to do full double shifts, so it took the 4 months. But with full double shifts, we would have gotten done a little quicker. Next slide, please. Our proposal is, and I think Allison alluded to this earlier, right now we're able to work from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. I mean 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And we're looking at extending that to 12 p.m. That gives us 2 full 8-hour shifts to work starting at 7 in the morning and working until midnight. It is allowed per the master cooperative agreement between the city and the authority with the approval of the city staff. And I'll get into this a little more detail when I talk about benefits, but this is primarily for the underground work. There's portions of the work that doesn't make sense to double shift. A lot of the grading, the curb and gutter, the paving, some of those things go so quick that you're not going to be double shifting that. But in the underground work, it's a huge improvement to our schedule and it mitigates a lot of risks. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And one other thing that allowing us to double shift during the week, it can help minimize what we're doing on weekends and the noise we make on weekends. And if things go well during the week, double shifting, we won't be in there on Saturdays and definitely not Sundays working if we don't have to. So it gives us an opportunity to mitigate working on weekends. If we're working on single shift, then the weekends become one of the few opportunities to pick up time and we're more likely to have to work weekends. Next slide, please. Our standard mitigations, first off is our equipment. Kiewit buys the latest, quietest equipment available and we keep it well maintained. That goes a long way to reduce the noise on the site. Another thing we have is instead of the beep, beep, beep noises you're used to hearing as backup alarms on construction sites, we have all our equipment has what we call directional quackers. These are actually, makes a quacking sound, kind of a staticky noise, and it is directional behind the equipment. So it limits where the noise is dispersed and limits the impact of those, of the backup alarms. Another thing we do intentionally is limit our noisy work to during the day. We're not going to go out there and run concrete saws or cut asphalt, run jackhammers, load rubble into trucks, those sort of things at night. We understand that makes no sense for the neighbors. It's a lot of noise and it's not necessary if we plan our work properly. So we do make a conscious effort to plan the noisy work during the days, even when we have night work. Next slide, please. The benefits is being able to double shift will allow the shortest possible closure durations at the grade crossings. And if things go well, in most cases, we'll be able to finish the grade crossings in less than the 3 or 4 months allowed currently in the document 29, which was the original goal of the project. I'll get into on the next bullet a little bit, but it does create opportunities to address unforeseen issues. And it limits the number of days that businesses, neighborhoods are impacted. If we have, if we're able to do something in 3 months instead of 6 months, that's fewer times people have to go the long way around. It's a shorter period of time that businesses may have their entrance to their business impacted by the work, those sort of things. And we think that overall, that's a big benefit to the community in general. As I mentioned, it creates an opportunity to address unforeseen issues. The critical work in any of these grade crossings is the underground work. That's where we run into the most unknown, unexpected, unforeseen issues. And the sooner we can get down there and dig things up and find out what's going on, the sooner we can identify these issues, the quicker we can get them addressed. And with the double shift, we have more time, we have the ability to address them faster once there's solutions in place. Every grade crossings we've worked at out here, we've run into unforeseen utilities, we found unforeseen foundations underneath the ground, and things we even know that are there aren't necessarily matching up with the drawings when we get down and open them up. Valves aren't quite where they're shown. 45s or connection points aren't exactly as they're shown on the drawings. These all create issues that need to be addressed within the timeline we have the grade crossing closed to make schedule. By double shifting, we find them earlier. And once we come up with a solution by double shifting, we're able to get them taken care of quicker and less likely to impact the overall project. So when it comes to our double shifting, we're primarily focused on the underground work to get that taken care of quickly. The opportunity to double shift other operations if necessary to pick up time also will help us maintain the overall closure duration. Next slide, please. Finally, with the freight rails shut down, that means right now we don't have to work weekends. With the train running Monday through Friday, that meant there were certain operations that required us to pull the track out at grade crossings to get utilities underneath the track. So therefore, we could only work from Friday afternoon till Monday mornings. And that would require 24-hour operations in a lot of cases to get the track pulled out, get the utility underground we need to get in, the 1, 2, or 3 utilities we're trying to get in, and then get the track in place in time for the train on Monday. With the track out right now, we don't have that issue of having to work weekends. And the more work we can get done now under double shift will reduce the necessity to work weekends later if the freight comes in back on. Right now, we're scheduled to have the freight back and running by April 30th. We're hoping for an extension, but basically right now we have from now until April 30th to get work, wherever work we can get done without the freight in place. And this is an opportunity to work fewer weekends in the future if we can get more work done now on a double shift. Next slide. That may be the last, that was the last slide. The one thing that slide that didn't make it was a bar chart schedule of the grade crossings in Glendora. A quick summary would be that with the current single shift, the 7 to 9 work hours, we would be doing grade crossings, finishing up Pasadena and Lorraine in February of 22. If we're able to go to a double shift, we could be done with the grade crossings, except for Foothill and Lone Hill, which have the bridges. But the other grade crossings, we could be done in August of 21, saving roughly 6 months of disruption within the city. That's what I have on working double shift. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, John, Chris, and Habib. So as I mentioned before, I'd like the public to have an opportunity to weigh in on this. So without objection, I'll open up public comment on this item, inviting members of the public to address the city council. The speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking only on this item. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. Please address your comments to me, the presiding officer. Public comment is limited to 30 minutes. If you'd like to request to speak, select the raise hand icon in the Zoom. Before the close of public comment period, you will then be called upon when it's your turn to speak. Do we have anyone that is written in for public comment, or is there anyone here on the line that would like to speak on this item? Raise your hand.
Mayor Alowis, we have received no written public comments via the public comment email address. And I am not seeing any hands requesting the opportunity to speak.
All right. So with that, then I will close the public comment and bring it back to council for questions. Mendel, you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you for giving me a chance to share. I won't say a lot because, as all of you know, I'm the city's rep on the JPA Construction Authority. So a lot of this I've already dealt with. Chris Berner, there was a citizen that asked me today, where is the freight line going to go? And I thought I heard you say the middle. So could you clarify that?
Yeah, so the freight line, the current existing freight line, which has largely been removed at this point in time within Glendora, was in the middle of the right of way. And to achieve the required separation between the freight and the light rail track, we've had to shift the freight track completely reconstructed in most locations to the south a little bit. Not very far, but it did get within Glendora. It got pushed to the south, and beyond Glendora, it gets pushed to the north, to the east of Glendora. It gets pushed to the north, but within Glendora, it gets pushed a little bit to the south and completely reconstructed. It'll be brand new track, brand new everything. That will be under construction here in the near future.
Okay. Thank you. And then whoever is running the slides, could you go to slide, I guess, number 7? It's page 15 that talks about the crossings. And John, I know that the colleagues of mine are probably going to ask you a little bit more about that, what you just said, but I thought I heard you say that on that slide, yeah, that's a slide, that all but Foothill and Lone Hill would be done by August 21 if we granted you what you're asking for. Did I understand that correct, or could you expand on maybe what you said with the visual slide that's currently up?
Yeah, so right now we're scheduled to have Branca done the 25th. Glendora, we're shooting to get done here in February. Gladstone is done, so that leaves Vermont, Pasadena, Glenwood or Elwood were closing. Wait, Glenwood were closing.
Glenwood,
Elwood, and Lorraine. So basically, after we get Glendora open, we're down to Vermont, Pasadena, Elwood, and Lorraine that don't have bridges, because that's Foothill and Lone Hill. And so if we single shift those, we'll be working through February 22 based on the current schedule. If we double shift those, we'll be done in August of 21 if we double shift those.
And John, do you mind reminding us when the original plan was set for those grade crossings?
Well, originally, I mean, our baseline schedule had those as double shift. We've submitted other schedules since then showing the single shift that the city has allowed. I'd have to go back and see what we previously submitted, but we're fairly close to our originals, our schedules as far as when we plan on starting Vermont and Elwood and Pasadena and Lorraine.
I do want to note that the closures at Foothill, Grand, and at Lone Hill are much shorter closures. I think it's 9 or 10 days or something like that.
Right, but we can't close the grade crossings completely there, but there will be phase closings to support the Bridge Falls work effort and the reworking of the grade crossings themselves. But we can't close them. We won't be closing those completely. It's Vermont, Pasadena, Elwood, and Lorraine that we're able to shut down completely to do the grade crossing work.
Okay, so John, what I think I'm hearing you say is that this would allow us all to cut out 7 additional months of work by having this additional time. I mean, am I kind of close there?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I have 6 actually.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And then would there be a commitment on your part? And I know construction, because as you've said, and as we've seen, you dig a hole and you think you're going to find what's there, and it's not there. But what is the ability for you guys to give a commitment to us to say that if we were to give you this time frame, that you wouldn't come back and ask for another 6 months, say? I mean, are you able to say, if you give us this, then that's all that we'll ever ask for?
Well, I wish I could guarantee that. I could guarantee it won't be another 6 months. It may be a week or two, depending on what reality brings. I mean, if we have another impact like at Glendora where we're held up 5 weeks,
yeah,
obviously we need to do something there. But
yeah.
I think we try to keep the city informed. We notify when we have these impacts. And currently the city is working with us at Glendora to expedite getting that work completed earlier than it would be otherwise. As of we've been allowed to double shift there now. We started a second shift last night at Glendora. That'll help expedite things.
Right.
And the city's been a good partner on addressing some of these unforeseen issues. And we're working through some things with them right now that should give us an opportunity to get done earlier than we would have otherwise.
Okay. Last question for either you, John, or even Chris. We have heard that there's a chance that you might be done 6 months to a year, like earlier. Is that close to being true now, or have you ratcheted that back, or kind of where are we there?
I'll address that one, John.
Okay.
We're making really good progress on the project. As I said, the project's going very well. The cities have been great in their support to the project, even through, COVID-19, which has been incredibly challenging for all of us. we are on track to finish the job, approximately 6 months ahead of schedule. I see absolutely no reason why that can't happen at this point in time. I mean, obviously, we're in a pandemic right now. Crazy things can happen and things, can pop up. But, I right now at this point in time, knowing what I know, and sort of projecting, reasonably, good things, no more craziness of pandemics and things like that. I feel very confident that we will finish this project early.
Okay, great. One last thing, and I know I said that prior, but this will be the last thing. So the parking, so Chris, when you alluded to the Peach part, is that a part of the 320, I think, or 302? I'm not sure what. 302. So is that a part of that number, or?
Yes.
And has that deal been made so that the public can know that the reduction is 28 cent or thereabouts?
That's correct. Yeah. So that additional Peach area, as I was calling it, is required to create a surface parking lot that would have 302 spaces on it. And it being a surface parking lot is I think very beneficial to the future for potential development down the road if that's what wants to happen there. That it will be there. It will be available to have that happen.
Okay. All right. I might have some more, Mayor, but for right now, that's all that I've got. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
David?
I'm almost as sure as John is about giving me a commitment not to come back and ask.
Strong guarantees, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for the great report. First, I want to announce I'm a fan of railroad and it coming to town and the light rail, so that's exciting. The third time it comes to Glendora will be a charm, I'm sure. I have some questions and concerns, and they're basically people related, actually. I guess the first one is on the delays, and you've run into problems, and you've been heroes on trying to mitigate the instance when the problem occurred, and thank you for that. We have a delay at Glendora, yet we're going to continue with the calendar to shut down Glenwood. So I'm always concerned while we got delays, but we continue shutdowns, the inconvenience with the people. So I'm assured that traffic flow says that's not an issue, but I think it's a little bit of a concern that, especially if we did not exercise the opportunity to work extra hours to shorten that delay. I don't know, is there need for a response or anything? Maybe not, but that I get concerned if we're shutting down too many places at one time and then run into delays.
Well, Glenwood is a significant distance away from Glendora. The traffic volume on the north-south streets adjacent to it is relatively low at Elwood and Pasadena and Lorraine. There's good circulation through there. And we don't believe that it will be, any negative impact, related to those two closures. And the remaining, the other two crossings, I can't remember exactly which ones they are. They're not going to begin until the other crossings are complete. What are the next two crossings you're going to do, John? Is it Vermont and? Do you know which ones are your next two?
You're muted, John.
Yeah, it's Vermont and Elwood at the moment.
Yeah, so those will not start until
Till Glendora's open up.
Yeah, so and certainly Vermont is, obviously very, very, it can't begin until Glendora is completed.
Okay, well, understand that. Another concern, and since I wasn't going to bring it up, but you guys opened the door with the supplemental environmental impact on the station platform, so I'm going to jump on that one. Again, people related. We're losing 28% of our promoted parking spaces with the reduction. And I guess I'm looking for a guarantee that Metro is convinced that we are not going to have overflow people going out into the neighborhood, burdening the neighborhood with daytime parking and taking away. And I'm sorry, but if I had to have a permit to park in front of my own house to say I lived there instead of I was being a train user, that's a long time forever. Something I don't want to listen to as a council member, and that's real. That would happen. So is this reduction going to assure us that we're not going to be pushed out into the neighborhood?
We believe the reduction will not have, those negative impacts that you described. We are working on a parking management plan for the city of Glendora. And basically that would make recommendations of various different techniques that can be implemented to prevent if there is any, higher demand than capacity of parking, that would prevent that. And there's some very simple things you can do aside from having a permitting program, which I agree that's a pretty drastic measure and probably fairly unpopular with most people. But there's some very simple signage that you can put close by to prevent certain length of parking prior to, say, 10 a.m. So that you can create a very narrow window to keep any kind of commuter that would come and park on some vulnerable street within the city from leaving their car there all day. So there are some very simple things that can be done that do not impact businesses and will not impact residents, but will prevent those people from parking their car there all day and getting on the goal line, going downtown and working and coming back. And Metro has also offered, if the city wants to take them up on it, to provide parking enforcement in and around the station area at no cost to the city. They would keep any fines that they administer, but there would be no cost to the city. So we think there's a no cost solution to any overflow that would preserve your parking in the manner that you would want to preserve it.
Okay. On that fee fine discussion, is the lot looking to be a fee lot or a free lot?
That when Metro implemented their new policy, charging for parking is part of that new policy. They have a certain metric that needs to be met before they start charging. It has to have a certain percentage of capacity before they begin charging. But Metro may possibly just initially begin charging to avoid any confusion with not starting off not charging and then then charging. They're still kind of analyzing that, but I think for our planning purposes, we should probably assume, although not for certain, but we should assume that Metro will charge for parking there, as they've done on the previous phase of the project.
Well, understood, and that does complicate the, hey, I can park across the street for free opportunity. So I guess that plays together, I guess, as a look. One last question I had about the parking lot, since that's coming to vote tomorrow on the board of directors. I challenged the layout, run-in transport buses into the parking lot, deep into the back of it, to the east end of it, to do a turnaround. You're running transport buses in through moving cars, as opposed to perhaps a drop-off right near the track and the platform on Vermont. Some available real estate that might have accomplished that and still allow spaces. So I'm personally not a fan of the given layout of the parking lot proposal. I hope we might be have some room for discussion on that in the future.
That turnaround is for smaller buses. It's not for larger buses. And generally in these parking lots, the people park there generally all day, not everyone, but most people do. So there's not a, once cars are parked, there's not a whole lot of movement of cars during the day. And where that drop off is, there's a fairly close connection to the pedestrian undercrossing for the access to the station. Big buses will not be in that area. We've worked with Foothill Transit and have identified other locations for bus stops for larger buses. So there won't be large buses going in that area.
Okay. I still don't agree with that concept, even the smaller buses, but keep them on the street. All right, we can talk later about the pedestrian access issue. Anyway, we're here to talk about your time schedule, and that keeps us moving and keeps us with fewer delays, and let's support that. So thank you very much. No other questions.
Thank you, David. Gary?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. First off, we're closing Glenwood next week, and luckily we're not in school right now. At least luckily, due to the construction. But there's plans to have a traffic light at the corner of Elwood and Foothill. Is that your project, Chris, that you guys will be doing that? And if so, when is the plans for that to be completed?
Yes, we are doing that. We ran into a little bit of an issue with finalizing the scope of that work. We've gotten past that. We know what we're going to do. And we are looking to include that work in the next contract with the parking contractor that will build the parking. We can move that forward quickly if that's a concern for you. If you would prefer it to be done sooner rather than later, we can look at ways to expedite it and get it done as quickly as possible. We've now sorted out our scope concerns. We now know what the city wants us to do, and we're in agreement to do that. It's just a matter of time of us getting it done.
If I can just add really quick, Gary, but before,
Sure.
That was a nice way of Chris saying the proposed design the city didn't like, and we asked for some enhancements to the proposed project, and the Gold Line agreed with us, and eventually that the enhancements would be done, hence the pushing back of the intersection.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. It's just one of those things that traffic going north and south on Elwood, that shouldn't be a major thoroughfare, but it is sometimes, especially when school is in, and trying to cross straight across there can be extremely difficult. So I think trying to get that done sooner rather than later would be appropriate. Do we have any type of a timeline as to when Ada may be closed by the hospital?
Hospital. I don't think we're closing it.
At Vermont.
Yeah, it's there in Vermont, John. It's the cul-de-sac there on Ada, just to the west of Vermont. I'm assuming when you do
Vermont
at Vermont, that would
Correct.
happen then.
Yes.
So
that's after we get the Glendora open right now.
Okay, so that's relatively soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then I just want to clarify, and we've had this conversation privately, but on Route 66, as a resident, as we're driving down Route 66, bottom line is we're going to be looking at two completely separate bridges going across. The current bridge for the freight line is not going to change in any way, shape, or form. And so the new bridge will be of a different design. So as you're driving east, it's going to look different than it is when you're driving west.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And then the last thing is with the final design of the parking and the tunnel that's going to go from the parking garage or from the parking lot over to the station, there is not going to be a tunnel going under the freight track or under the north track at this point. So I guess my question is, there was a plan for an entrance that went through the Glendora Station condos. And even though it's sort of mapped out as a walkway, that really is not going to be necessary anymore. There'd be really no reason for anybody to walk through there. Is that going to be abandoned? Has there been any conversation with the condo association as to how to deal with that or anything yet?
Well, that's up to the city, and what you stated was absolutely correct. The way the project ultimately unfolded, and CPUC requirements and restrictions, it's made that access point, in my opinion, not really something that makes a lot of sense to do. The distance and walking is actually longer using that route than simply walking down along the sidewalk along Glendora Avenue and Ada to the station entrance. So it's completely up to the city as to whether they want to open up that easement and create that walkway. We can support that, but in my opinion, there's really no advantage to doing so. So I will leave it up to the city to make that decision. But there is no advantage, almost a slight disadvantage in walking. There is a slight disadvantage in walking distance. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it's up to the city to make that decision.
And Chris, I would just add that internally we've had those same conversations and sort of pending first mile, last mile improvements and signage and sort of the wayfinding approach to ensure that the shortest path of travel is there is sort of what we were internally looking at before bringing an item to the council. So as we've talked to some of the council members, I know David, you've talked about this specifically since your arrival on the city council, and that's probably an item that we will bring forward.
Chris, that's a great answer, Chris. I appreciate it.
I'm glad I got that one right.
Got that one good. Thank you.
And then, my last comment or question is just about the extended hours. I have some real concerns with at some of the intersections we're talking about. We're looking at a lot of residential properties that are going to be in there. Saving 6 months off of the time periods would be great. I wish there was some way to have some assurance that extending the hours would really shorten the time by that much. But I struggle with giving a blanket approval for extending these hours. I understand that from time to time it might be necessary, but I really struggle with giving a blanket approval of allowing work to be done all the way up until midnight in residential areas. So that'll be something that we'll have to take a look at.
Well, I mean, we're working right now at Glendora Avenue. If you want to come out at night, we can walk the site and you can get a feel for what we're doing and how much noise we actually make.
Okay. And it may be one of those things that you just started doing it at Glendora Avenue, correct?
Correct.
Or you're starting tonight?
Well, we started last night.
Started last night.
Yeah.
It may be beneficial to us to get a little bit of a feel as to exactly what's happening there before we make this decision. So, I don't know. It's just some of these crossings, when I look at Elwood and Pasadena and Lorraine, are right in the middle of residential neighborhoods. So I do have concerns about that, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. That's all I have for right now, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Karen?
Thank you. I live at Ada and Elwood, so I've had the chance to watch all the work at Glenwood and Elwood. And if I was a kid, I'd get my Tonka truck out and go over there and play in the dirt, because it has been fascinating to watch all the work, and they have been excellent getting the street sweepers out, cleaning up the dust. The noise has been minimal. So I applaud them for all the work they've done, and it's exciting. You never realize how big the right of way is until they clean all that stuff out. And you're like, wow, look at that. Amazing. In terms of the parking structure, what I've observed is that when a station is the end of the line, and so I think that folks have seen that in Azusa because it was the end of the line, that parking was such an issue. But because Glendora won't be, I think that it's going to be, successful with the 302 parking spots. So that doesn't concern me too much. One of the questions I have is, in terms of other cities, have they granted this for all the grade crossings, the extended hours, or how has that worked out in other communities?
Right now in Laverne, they're allowing us to work the extended hours. They said at Gladstone, the city of San Dimas gave us extended hours, not the full double shift. They're still contemplating what they're going to allow us to do going forward.
And Pomona has granted it. As
Yes, Pomona's allowed the full hours, double shifts.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues that if this will move things along, it's a great solution. It's just one of those tricky things of saying, yes, do it everywhere all the time versus maybe, this spot or that spot because it's really necessary. But, I think that it definitely would be a benefit to be able to maximize your work time during the week. So I don't have any other questions right now.
Thank you, Karen. So I'm going to echo my concerns about closing Glenwood on January 18th without having Barranca and Glendora open. We can say anecdotally, we're not going to have any issues or any problems, but if you're the one impacted by it, you have a problem. So is there any way of pushing that out to the 25th? So when you're done, at least with Barranca, to at least have to start the work on Glenwood, is that a possibility? And not knowing when you're going to be done with Glendora.
Yes, we can push it out. With Glenwood, the real critical thing is when the freight's back in service, because at that point we won't have grade crossing arms and stuff up anymore. So we need to be able to close that when the freight's back in service. So we can delay it a bit.
You only have a few days, as long as you get done when you say you're going to get done on Barranca.
Correct.
So
well, is it Glendora and Barranca you want open before we close Glenwood?
It'd be nice, but if we can at least have Barranca open, so I know you may have still some issues with Barranca with your asbestos coverings and all that. I don't know where you're at with that process.
And Mayor, that's if I can, that's Glendora Avenue.
Right.
That has the asbestos issue.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, and I think our tentative date is February 19th at this point. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
So if they at least open up Barranca, that at least gives us another way going north, you might say, as opposed to closing 3 of them down. I have a real concern with that.
Mayor, if I can, is the request to wait until Glendora on February?
No, just at least have Barranca open before they close down.
The 25th.
Okay.
Yes, you only had delayed what 7 days?
Yeah.
It's if you it gives you encouragement to get Barranca done quicker, right?
Yes.
They tell me they will get Barinka done on or by the 25th.
Okay, all right. Also, I was asked by a business person here in town that rides their bike frequently about the trestles on Route 66 to be more bike friendly. Underneath the trestles, when you go there, it's a little hairy because there's not much room. I don't know if there's much that can be done with that at all, because you're going to be adding actually more concrete verticals. They asked if maybe the median and the inside could be shrunk down so you can give more room for bicycles to go back and forth. I'm just posing a question if there's anything that can be looked in for that. If there's any possibility.
I don't know that very well, John, but I'm assuming not, with the peer protection and
Yeah,
other things we have to fit in there.
It's tight through there right now with the size of the concrete column we have and the requirements for the roadway width and such. So there's not much room to add for any additional bicycle space.
So we didn't know if the center median could be shrunk down at all to give more of a wider path.
Not at this point with the current design.
So when you put up the construction and you put the extensions to hold the bridge up, will you be redoing that section of the road on both sides?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get a new road for about what, just underneath the bridge or further on both sides?
I have to double check the extent of it.
Okay, can we go to compromise? Will you give us compromise line?
Compromise line.
Not too far.
What that means, but as far as giving it to you, but
further to the east, it's a signal further to the east of that. Hey, we want you to help us out with repaving Route 66.
It's not.
I want to go to Compromise Lane, which I'm not exactly sure where that.
That's to the I guess the north.
It's to the east.
Or east. Yeah. Okay. I know where that is now. Yeah. No, we're not going that far, I don't believe.
Darn. Almost had you there. To extend the concerns that that Councilmember Friedendahl had about dropping off and picking up, and Habib, maybe you can help me with this, because I've been after for quite some time about adding the kiss and ride there on Vermont and south of the railroad tracks right there. It just makes more and more sense to be able to put that. I know that my colleagues think I'm trying to climb up a rope here with this, but I still think it's such a great idea. It gives you more parking internally. You can have your buses that go in and out of there cleanly, and hopefully reduce the congestion. You're saving a whole lot of money by not putting the structure up there, reducing our parking. It's a small little investment, and it cleans up that corner. I know you're having your meeting tomorrow. I've been pushing on this, been working with the supervisors on it. I sure would like for you guys to give this consideration like you want our consideration to double time. No pressure. Habib?
Well, we understand your concern. It's not part of the current scope of what we're doing. And I think we have sufficient access way there, Chris, don't we?
We do.
For us.
But doesn't that help you with not having to have the internal roads to drop off and pick up when you can just do it on the outside? Won't you gain parking that way?
We don't really see the internal roads, being an issue. We think, the cars will come there, they'll park, and then the short, subtle transit buses will be able to come in and leave without any problem.
Trying to sell me on it? Okay, I still would like for you to consider it. Another question I have is on the station itself. Will it have turnstiles, or will it have the pass buttons on there?
It will have Metro change their design criteria after we built the previous phase of the project. So there are turnstiles on all of the stations in this phase of the project. And that's just a new Metro standard, so it will have that.
Okay, and to be crystal clear, from what date to what date are you asking us to extend your hours for?
Well, right now it would be from now until August of 21.
So if we were to give you the approval to August of 21, then you would have to come back to us for an extension.
Correct.
Currently in the contract, it's just to make sure everyone's on the same page, staff decides if we approve or don't approve the requested extended hours. The contract specifies obviously that we have some issues. We've had them with water issues a couple times here that we've worked to. We've had extended hours, and then there are some times when 24-hour construction will be needed. Lone Hill and Grand come to mind as areas where we may face pretty significant challenges. So this is, and just John, I don't want to speak for you, but you started out saying grade crossings only. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. We're not looking at extending the hours past that late at the mid blocks.
Okay, so for Adam or John or whomever, if we approve this to the 21st and it goes past that, does it come back to council or does staff manage that?
Staff can manage that.
So you won't have to come back to council to extend it.
Staff could we wanted the conversation to be, so currently the contract requires this back and forth with staff and the JV and the Gold Line throughout the process. It's something Allison and her staff go through, comes to my level. If there's some major concerns, then we move forward. It is nice sometimes understanding where the challenges were. As Gary mentioned in earlier conversations, it became apparent that there was a different sort of read on the contract between when John's group bid the contract for what they thought the work would be and what staff read the contract to mean with the allowable schedules and work hours in the city's municipal code as stated in the agreement. So that difference of understanding or request led us to where we are at this evening, which is a request, which I believe is to stay on the original schedule, but double shift.
Okay, so at this juncture right now, you need council approval to extend.
This would basically give council direction to staff to permit double shifting from this point forward without the back and forth from staff and the JV.
Okay, so if we were to make a motion to say, okay, you're good till August of 2020 of this year, then if it goes beyond that, you still have the authority to let's say extend to December or into next year?
Yes.
Unless we put a cap on that.
Unless council directs me to come back.
Okay. So bring it back to council for any final comments. Does anyone have any final comments?
I've got a question. Again, I'm struggling with this going till midnight. So the next closures are going to be Vermont and Elwood, and they will be completely done before you moved on to Pasadena and Lorraine. Is that correct?
Correct.
Would it be acceptable for us to grant the request to do the double shifting for Vermont and Elwood, and we can take a look at it? If it goes without a hitch, we can then go ahead and extend it out. I know this is, it's a touchy subject all the way around, but at least that way it would give us a little bit of assurances as to how things are going to go with those two intersections. Vermont, the residential neighborhood is limited. There are some there, but there's not going to be a whole lot. On Elwood, there'll be a lot of interaction with the neighborhood there, and so we'll have a real feel for how it's going to affect a residential neighborhood at that point. And we could come back at that point with a simple consent calendar item stating that we're granting it for the rest of the crossings.
Is that a question for somebody?
Yes.
Nobody wants to answer on the other side.
Well, I that's not our preference, but I think that certainly is something that we could live with. Is that correct, John?
Yes. As long as we get more than one grade crossing that we can double shift. One of the issues we have is if we only have one grade crossing is our staffing. And we need so much staff to supervise this work, but we don't need, if we have one guy working at night with just what's going on at that one grade crossing, he's not efficient. So if we can get 2 grade crossings and be able to double shift both, that'll work for us. Even if it's only for the next 3 or 4 months. And like you said, we use that as a test period and go from there.
Okay,
And
perfect.
Gary, staff acknowledges on the city side, sort of our staff here, that long-time staff planning makes the job a whole lot easier. We fully acknowledge that in their requests moving forward. I'd want something similar on my end. If I could guarantee double shift or overtime for a period of time, it just makes it easier to do some of that shifting and staffing.
Okay, well, if everybody could live with that, I would like to, when we're ready, to incorporate that into a motion. If
Well, I think we're ready at that point. Gary, you want to make a motion?
okay,
I would support that too, Gary.
okay. So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept staff recommendations with the limitation of, for right now, it would just be extending the double shifting for Vermont and Elwood to come back to council at the appropriate time to extend that further.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Kathleen, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Sure, I have a motion by Councilmember Boyer and a second by Councilmember Thompson. I'll conduct the roll call. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alowis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the participation. It wasn't easy, but we got there.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
You too.
So this takes us now to new business number item 8, amendment of the city manager employment agreement. I'd like to invite our city attorney, Mr. Bill Winder, to present the staff report. Bill?
All right, now we've got some power. So this item is a reflection of the direction that the council gave when it conducted its annual performance evaluation and annual salary review of the city manager. It extends the term of his contract and it increases his base salary. And it is consistent with the council direction to our office, and we recommend that the council approve the contract amendment and authorize the mayor to execute it. And I'll be pleased to answer questions.
Thank you, Bill. Mendel?
Nothing, and I would support this.
Gary?
No real questions, but just a comment that with everything that we're going through right now, making a decision like this may seem a bit odd to some, but I think it's important to understand that, when Adam came on board, he's done an amazing job. And for us to be in the financial position that we are in right now, I don't think we would be there without his leadership. Some of the things that some of our neighboring cities and other cities in Los Angeles County are dealing with are extremely difficult. Of course, yes, Measure E helped. The residents of Glendora coming through and showing their support of the community was really helpful to where we are today. But coming into Adam's initial employment, there was an understanding that he came in at a level that probably was a little lower than what should have been expected for a city manager of a city of this size. And so this really is nothing more than acknowledging the job that he's done. And, for that reason, I'm very supportive of this. And again, kudos, Adam, to the job you've done, and to the entire staff for what they've done as they have guided the community through this pandemic. So I will be supporting this as well.
Thank you, Gary. David?
Thank you, Adam, for the great job, and keep up the good work and support. I support this.
Thank you, David. Karen?
Not only through the pandemic has Adam earned hazard pay, but just what he endures on a regular basis, he should get triple hazard pay. But thank you for your continued leadership and guidance, as well as to the department heads and all the city staff for leading us through these challenging times. And so I support this.
Thank you, Karen. And I too echo my colleagues, their words. Adam, you know, this is a stressful time. It's an emotional time. It's challenging for not only you, but staff and our entire city population. It's just incredible what we're having to deal with right now. And you're doing a great job for what you have to work with. So thank you very much. And we feel very happy that you're here. We're very grateful that we are able in a position to recognize you with the funds that we are doing this, because you are a critical asset. I've always said this, that our assets are our people, not our holdings that we have. It's our people throughout the entire city, and I'm grateful for that. And I like to think that our morale is doing fairly well, even considering the COVID-19 situation we're in right now. So thank you again for everything you're doing. So I guess we have to have a motion. Anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
Correct.
So I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Davis to approve amendment number 4 to the city manager employment agreement between the city of Glendora and Adam Raymond, approved on August 14th, 2018, and authorize the mayor to execute the same. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll conduct a roll call vote. Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Alowis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Kathleen. This brings us to item number 9, comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. I'd like to invite account manager Brittany Aguilar to present the staff report. Brittany?
Hi, good evening, everyone, Mayor, council members. The item tonight that I'm presenting is the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. My presentation tonight will be a basic overview of the CAFR structure, some financial highlights for fiscal year 2020, as well as some opinions and awards. Next slide, please. The CAFR is broken down into 3 different sections. The first section is the introductory section made up of the letter of transmittal, the independent auditor's report, wherein lies the opinion on our financial statements, and the financial section, which is the management discussion and analysis, where it compares fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 19, the basic financial statements, supplemental information, and last, the statistical section, which includes various performance measures and other analytics to evaluate the health of the city, as well as some additional performance measures within the city departments. Next slide, please. Some additional reports that the auditors issue are the investment and GAN limit agreed upon procedures and the housing compliance report, which is required by the California Health and Safety Code. Next slide. Some of the key takeaways from an audit and the issuance of the CAFR is that it's a snapshot for 12 months of activity through June 30th, 2020. The CAFR is commonly used for bond ratings and compliance reporting and is required by bond issuers, state statute, and city policy. The audit is also performed and presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, governmental accounting standards board pronouncements, and governmental auditing standards. So at a minimum, the city must follow or be in compliance with these. The audit also reviews some city internal controls, policies, and procedures to assist the auditors with testing of financial reporting and compliance. Next slide. As we move on into the financial statements, this graphic is a depiction of the fund structure for governmental-wide financial statements, which was required and implemented with GASB 34, where the goal was to show the readers a high-level perspective of the financials. It's comprised of two different sections, the business type and the governmental activities, where governmental activities are made up of our governmental funds, the general fund, special revenue funds, debt service, and capital projects, where business activities are comprised of our enterprise proprietary funds, which would be our water capital projects and water operations funds. On the right, you'll see that the fiduciary funds are presented separately, where they are also presented separately within the CAFR and not included in the governmental-wide financial statements. The governmental-wide financial statements are comprised of 40 different individual funds. Next slide, please. This table summarizes the activity for the city's overall net position ending in June 30th, 2020. This table is broken up into the governmental activities and business type activities. You can see in the governmental activities, it saw a 1.2 million decrease. And bear in mind that the governmental-wide statements reflects our outstanding pension liability and other post-employment benefits, and that's not included anywhere else in the report where governmental funds are discussed. Business type activities saw an increase of $6.7 million, where that will be used towards future infrastructure projects. Next slide, please. This is a different depiction of the previous slide where it shows the overall city's net position. This is broken down into the components of the net position. The biggest takeaway from this is the several different components where the capital assets represents 86% of the overall net position. The capital assets is the dollar amount invested back into the city with various infrastructure and capital projects. And like I said, 86% of it is the overall net position, and it's also not spendable. The additional components are the restricted, where, as the name lies, it's restricted for specific purposes such as housing loans and capital projects. The unrestricted component is anything not included in those previously mentioned components. You can see that the net position increased from fiscal year 2019 to 2020 by $5.5 million, and the main contribution was the water fund's net position increase. Next slide, please. As we move on into the individual governmental fund financial statements, this is a breakdown of the two major funds for fiscal year 2020, General Fund and the City Capital Projects Fund. And individually, you'll see the compilation of the non-major column, which is comprised of the remaining 34 individual governmental funds, which those specifically are more represented through restricted fund balances, since that's the nature of special revenue funds, is that they cannot be used for specific purposes, or they have to be used for specific purposes required by law, outside agencies, or other restrictions not under the city's control. However, the general fund met the reserve policy goal of the 45% maximum contingency reserve. And as a result, we were able to allocate funds to capital projects, the pension stabilization, and to assist any other internal service fund that was facing a recorded deficit. Overall, $5.1 million were transferred. Next slide, please. This table is a consolidation of the activity for 2020, specifically for the general fund. It saw an increase of $3.2 million for the year, and the city was able to see the increase in the contingency reserve and the funds transferred to the PERS stabilization fund. Some of these increases were from budget savings, the positive market health for investments, property taxes, and the success of the Measure E sales transaction and use tax. Next slide, please. This is another focus on the general fund's fund balance, where we break down its specific reserves. We saw an increase of $182,000 in the contingency reserve, and the $1.6 million that we were able to transfer to the PERS savings reserve to save and address any future unfunded liabilities and changes that could be issued by CalPERS. Next slide. Some of the other fund groups that are covered within the CAFR are the proprietary funds, the internal service funds, and the fiduciary funds. And on the next slide, we'll discuss the water fund. Next slide, please. So a few highlights within the water fund is that it saw a major increase of $7.2 million, which the city was able to move $5 million of that to the water capital projects funds for any future infrastructure projects that they may need. Next slide, please. The auditors issued an unmodified clean opinion on the 2020 financial statements, which is the best opinion that the city could receive. In addition, the city also received the GFOA Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting for last year's 2019 CAFR. The city also applied for the 2020 CAFR, and we will receive results this year. The city also received the GFOA Award for Outstanding Achievement in Popular Annual Financial Reporting for the 2019 Popular Annual Financial Report, which was the first time the city has received this award and the first time the city has applied for this award. And we also applied for the 2020 award, which will be receiving results later this year. Next slide, please. Next steps for the finance division is the mid-year review for the fiscal year 21 budget, which the city departments are already doing underway right now. The budget preparation for the biennial fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 budget, and of course, the audit for the fiscal year 21 year. Next slide, please. Hard copies of the CAFR are included in the Finance Division, City Clerk's Office, as well as the library, but additionally, it can be found on the website in the Finance Report section. Next slide, please. Before I make my recommendation, I wanted to give special thanks to those in the Finance Division, our auditors, as well as everybody that has assisted within the city to collaborate, review, and test for the issuance of this CAFR. It's not a small feat. So at this time, I'd like to recommend to City Council to receive and file the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. At this time, we do have Francis, our audit partner in the audience, and myself to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brittany. Well done on your report. Very well done. I'll bring this back to council. Mendel?
Brittany, thank you. And I know it's late, but I just want to congratulate you and the entire team for really a tremendous report. We can look around, cities all over the state are not as strong as we are. And the awards are well earned. The audit is clean, which is great. The ability to contribute to reserves or equity during these times is unheard of. As has already been said, thankfully, the citizens passed our Measure E. Thankfully, a couple of years ago, we were able to get a better rate on our POB, and just the fiscal stewardship that Adam and June and you and others have been able to give, and the entire city team has given to expenses as well as revenue, has made this really a fantastic year. And although there has been a lot of pain and hurt and challenges, I just want to say thank you, not only from myself, but from everybody that is here, knowing that we have a strong financial base in order to continue to serve from. So thank you. That's all of the questions, or really the statement that I've got. So thank you.
Thank you, Mendel. David? You're muted.
That's so you wouldn't hear me snoring.
Wasn't very nice.
Thank you, Brittany. That was a great report. Very comprehensive, and thank you for taking the lead on that. And I congratulate your whole team for the well-recognized awards and well-deserved and clear audits. And thank you. And I have no questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Gary?
Brittany, again, great job in the report, and great job to the team for putting all this together. There is one thing I want to point out. If any members of the public actually take the time to take a look at this and review it, there's some pretty dramatic differences in expenditures between 2019 and 2020. And most of that has to do with the payoff of our pension obligation through our pension obligation bond. So if somebody's looking at these numbers and you start seeing why are the expenditures $60 million higher one year than they are in the other, it's basically because we borrowed money to pay off a debt that was in place. So just wanted to note that, but for the most part, great report as always. And I do appreciate the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Karen?
Thank you, Brittany, for your presentation, and thank you to the Finance Department for all of your hard work. Appreciate it, and congratulations on well-deserved recognition.
Thank you, Karen. And Brittany and staff and June, you've got to be proud of your staff. They've done a great job, and it's amazing. It's like you guys play three-dimensional chess in managing this stuff. I mean, for the folks out there looking, this is what Brittany just talked about, and look how thick it is. She just condensed it down into some sound bites, easy to digest, and like enjoyable. Yeah, and so I'm just amazed at how well you guys do this stuff. It's still it takes a lot of time still to figure some of this stuff out, but well done. I have no questions at all. So do I have a motion to approve?
Mayor, actually, if I may, just really quick, Mayor, just point out a couple of really important aspects of what we were able to do at the end of the year, if you wouldn't mind, just for those watching at home.
Sure.
Brittany, can you remind us, so we not only met our 45% contingency reserve, so money we have aside, worst case scenario, if something happens, we were also able to put money away for future pension obligations. Can you remind us how much additional money we put away for future pension obligations?
$1.6 million.
And also for future capital projects, sort of a return on investment for Measure E. Do you recall off the top of your head how much money we also added for capital projects?
I want to say around 2.8 million.
And so for those people listening and out in the community, this is money that can be set aside for streets, for technology projects, for facility improvements, and we'll have that ability, council, as we approach our next 2-year budget. And I think it's really important to note that when we talk about not just a change in the general fund, there's also capital project funds out there that are receiving, the benefit of what the city was able to do this past year. And as was said, we owe a great gratitude of debt to the Measure E, not only our citizen ad hoc committee, but the residents who understood the need. And because they understood the need, and because we have such great staff in place that understood the challenges this past year, we were able to do well, which sets us up well for the future. As we know, there are challenges relating from COVID that will be long-term, but these changes in putting money aside will allow us to address those challenges in a proactive and measured way moving forward. And Brittany, you did a great job. Don't sell yourself short. Also, we have the PAFR for those of you who want the Reader's Digest version. We promised you the short version of that. A project I know Brittany had a huge hand in last year and also this year as well. So it's great to have that as well. Not many cities our size do have those. So just some sincere appreciation on my end. June, you and your staff always do a great job. And I think putting the money aside, and I know our auditors are here. I bet you they wish all the cities put money aside like this. It makes their job a lot easier when it comes time for the opinion as well. So just wanted to chime in briefly. Thank you.
No, well done, Adam. Thank you. So with that, we have a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Yeah, I would move that.
Kathleen, you want to do a roll call vote, please? You're muted.
Thank you. I have a motion by Davis, a second by Thompson. And for roll call, Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedendahl,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Alowis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Kathleen. Let's bring us to our last item, council and staff items. Mendel, do you have any closing remarks?
Stay well, mask up, and enjoy life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mendel. Gary?
Nothing to add, just everybody be careful and be kind.
Thank you, Gary. David?
Nothing, thank you.
Karen?
Nothing.
All right, any comments from staff? Hearing none. I'd ask our city attorney to read us out a closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen that are watching remotely and virtually. City Council considered 2 items on its closed session agenda. The first was facts and circumstances which could give rise to a significant exposure to litigation in one case. The authority to hold this closed session in private was printed in the agenda and articulated prior to the closed session. There was a privileged and confidential briefing. There was a discussion of options available to the council, and the council directed the city attorney's office to pursue a effort to negotiate a resolution of this potential dispute and provided a range of negotiating authority. Secondly, the city council met with the city attorney's office and Adminsure to discuss one matter of pending litigation to which the city is a party, the Viejas versus City of Glendora, Los Angeles County Superior Court, case number 19 STCV 18237. The authority to meet privately with the council in closed session was printed on the closed session agenda and articulated prior to the closed session. There is a mediation, court-ordered mediation coming up in the near future. The city is required to provide its city negotiators with a potential settlement authority. That was discussed with the council. Questions were asked and answered. And the city representatives that will be participating in the mediation were given up to a maximum settlement authority in an effort to resolve this dispute through mediation. That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Bill. Our meeting is adjourned at 10:14 in the memory of Mr. Paul Hatch. Good night, everyone.
All right.